Okay. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the October 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Burlingame City Council. It's a pleasure to see everybody here. We'll call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. And as usual, we have a pledge. And I was going to ask, I know that we're being graced by a couple of former electeds out in the hallway. So I figured they would know the pledge, but they haven't come in. So Casey, I wonder, would you mind leading us in the pledge from Caltrain?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. If we could do a roll call, please.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Present.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Here.
Councilmember Beach.
Here.
Vice Mayor Coulson. Here. Mayor Brownridge.
Here, all accounted for. 2449, AB 2449 has to do with remote participation if a council member has to plug in remotely, but we have all of our council members here, so we can dispense with that. Report out from closed session. We did have a closed session. Mr. Attorney, is there anything to report out?
No reportable action.
Thank you very much. Upcoming events, I have just a few. I welcome any others from colleagues. But on from October 12th to the 16th, our wonderful library is doing its annual book sale in the Lane Room. So come along and get some great bargains and support our library at the same time. And if you were a teacher, you get 50% off. So please come on in and enjoy that. On October 22nd, our library is doing a really what sounds like a marvelous tribute to Old Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra. That's at 5:30 p.m. and it's a mix talking and music fusion to pay tribute to Frank Sinatra. So I think that sounds like a lot of fun. And then on October 19th at 6:30, our Historic Society is doing a panel on Whiffler. So Whiffler was a noted mid-century architect who did a lot of buildings here in Burlingame. And this is a chance to actually hear from Mr. Whiffler about his design aesthetic and the work that he did. So that's the list of upcoming items I have. Colleagues, are there anything else you'd like to let the public know about?
I have one.
Oh, yes, Madam City Clerk.
As always, we have our I Voted sticker contest open to anyone 18 and under and lives here in Burlingame. Your design could be featured on the presidential primary or the presidential election.
Or my
So make our election more fun and get your sticker designs in. You can find more information on the city clerk's.
Thank you very much for that. Any other notices? Yes,
So I have one from our poet laureate on October 7th at 2 p.m. in the teen room of the Burlingame Library. She is hosting an open mic. And the title of her event is, it's basically a, let's see, how did I get this? I want to make sure I get the title right. Banned Books Open House. And so anyone can come. She has a list of all the books that have been banned around the country. And the participants are invited to write poems in response to the banned books in other states. And I think that's kind of an interesting, innovative thing. So anyone who's around is welcome to stop on by.
what time was that?
It would be October 7th, which I believe is Saturday or Sunday. What is that? Saturday at 2 p.m. this weekend, October 7th at 2 p.m. in the teen room of the Burlingame Library.
Neat. Thank you for that. Seeing no other upcoming events to alert people to, we'll move on to disclosure of SB 1439 conflicts. None to report. Is that true going forward then?
That is true.
Great. So that takes us then to presentations, and this is a presentation from Caltrain on the state of electrification, which is very exciting for everybody on the peninsula, but not least of which the people of Burlingame.
Hello? Okay, think you can hear me. Great. Casey Fromson, Chief Communications Officer for Caltrain. And I'm joined by Ted Bergwin, a colleague of mine from Caltrain. So we're going to go ahead and jump into a short presentation. This is really focusing on a couple partnerships that we've had for the city on a long time, the Caltrain Electrification Project, and then how that ties to the Broadway Grade Separation Project and what our plans are for the next year when we start electrified service, which is very exciting. Next slide, please. So I'm very excited to say that it is next year that we will have electrified trains that passengers can ride. This has been a long time in the making. We started construction in 2017, worked all through the pandemic. And now it is so nice to say that in less than 12 months, we'll be able to roll out a service that is going to feel a lot different. We'll have more service, it'll be faster service, and just the feel for everyone, the experience, the world-class experience that everyone will be able to see is around the corner. We've had a couple events for the public to start to see the trains. We had one in San Jose in July. We just had an event in San Francisco. Was it just a week ago? Seems like not too long ago on that. And then we're going to have one in San Mateo early 2024. So we'll make sure that everyone knows about that. But we're continuing to just build up the excitement that it really is coming and people are going to appreciate how different it feels from our very old trains that we have out there today. Next slide, please. And so focusing on Broadway for a minute, we suspended weekday service in 2005, and that was partly due to the holdout rule, which means that it's a condition that makes it not ideal for both train service and kind of the surrounding crossings and how it functions there. But in replace for that, we do have a shuttle that is provided by commute.org, and we kept weekend service in place. Next slide, please. Just a little bit more about what that holdout rule looks like. This is a condition that only exists in two parts of the entire corridor. And over the years, Caltrain, along with our partners in different communities, have worked to remove these. Often it takes a major capital project. The latest one was in South San Francisco. And if anyone's seen that station there, part of that whole station capital effort was also the removal of the holdout rule, because when a holdout rule happens, you have to have a train that's literally holding while another train can go past it. So this is something that's not ideal, especially for train delays, but also it has the ability to increase auto delays and increase gate downtime. So there's some sensitivities about just the way the makeup is. Fortunately, what is planned for the city is, of course, a grade separation in that area, which would remove that, making the condition a much safer, increased traffic flow, and then also have a station associated with it as well. Next slide, please. So everybody knows, I think, going through that Broadway crossing today, that we very much need and are interested in having a grade separation project there. But what does happen if we were to keep that in place and add any additional service at this time is it would make those crossings more challenging. There could be some additional gate time there and it's already congested. And so it just adds in a level of risk at those crossings that we think would be much better if we wait until when we have that grade separation project in place to have that then fully open, more functional for both the community, also the railroad, and then add on that electrified service on top of that. Next slide, please. So a recap, I know the city has spent so many hours on this topic. I feel silly even kind of having a slide on it because I know you in the community know it so well from the years that we've worked on with it. But it is continuing to move forward. We expect 100% design in 2024. And really, I think it's going to be a collective effort that we all need to partner with to get the remaining funds so we can get this project in the ground, moving and done before we know it. It certainly is a project of high need along the corridor, and Caltrain is a committed partner to working with the city and the other funding partners to make sure we find those funds and keep this project moving forward, because it certainly is very close to being able to have the shovels really in the ground and making a world of a difference for this community. Next slide, please. So how this kind of pairs with electrification is that we think that it would be best, and we've talked to staff and different stakeholders on this effort that when we introduce electrified service next year, that we would continue to have the weekend service and have our shuttle features that we have in place there. We will be increasing service, and it's really not number of trains there. It should be the number of stops to close by stations. So Burlingame service right now in our proposed service would increase. We also would have high service at Millbrae, and that we really need to move forward quickly and advance that grade separation project. So we can finish that off, and then we introduce, a higher level of service there when we have that project in place, which again, we need a little bit more funding. And I think all of us continuing to work together on that effort. Next slide, please. So kind of that big picture timeline, assuming we kind of are moving forward, we could begin some type of utility relocation potentially next year. Then we'd start electrified service on the corridor. Again, kind of those sister stations close by, getting some additional service. Then you can see on here, construction could be starting in that 2025 timeframe, complete by 2029. And so we need to keep working together to make sure we have this vision come to reality. I can speak from experience on the electrification project that these things really don't happen overnight. It's years and years of hard work in the making on it. But we wanted to come to the council to make sure that we continue to be transparent about what our plans are and what our needs are for these next steps of these very important projects. So next slide. So we're coming here again to kind of talk about the electrification, that service plan. It's still the preliminary service plan at this point, but we want to lock that down by the end of this calendar year. So then we're clear of what we're doing and can roll out that service next year. And so that would be in parallel with our efforts to work on the grade separation project and get that complete. We're keeping our presentation short and sweet tonight, but I'm happy to take any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you very much for that. It's a great update. I'll just ask you quickly for a number of members of the audience who probably haven't been following it as closely, but just in a couple of lines, the benefits of electrification to the average train goer.
Sure. So where to start? I'll start with the experience though, which is a nice one. So you get on our trains today, you have paper signs on there. They're old, they've been out there 30 plus years. When you step onto these new trains, you're going to have Wi-Fi on there. You'll have digital display boards. There'll be plugs, outlets at every seat. The experience, kind of the lighting and the feel and the comfort of it is just so much different. And then it's the actual service on there. So in addition to kind of a smoother, quieter ride, we're able to run more service. So those trains have the capability to accelerate and decelerate much faster than our diesel trains. And so, as I mentioned there, we're able to increase the number of stops at a station in a city. It's really because of that performance of that. And so in our proposed schedule right now, we have savings of up to 25 minutes shorter for a local trip. And then we can run some express trains that will make the patterns very simple. You could get on an express train, you get on a local train, either one are going to be faster than what you have today. And it will feel like more of it. So you really get that faster and more frequency with the same number of trains we have out there.
Thank you. And I'm assuming that because it can stop and start faster, there's probably also some benefit to gate downtime.
That one is pretty schedule dependent. I might have to get back to you on anything really specific on that one. But one thing I did forget, and I know this city is very conscious of it, is obviously the greenhouse gas benefits too, when we take out 30-plus-year-old diesel trains for brand new, and it will be fully electric between San Francisco and San Jose. So we'll have a zero emission corridor.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, are there any questions for Caltrain? Yes, please, Vice Mayor.
May I please just ask a question? The holdout situation, is that because the trains just cannot simply pass each other at a high rate, or what creates that holdout situation?
It is what we like to have in place to reduce risk of any safety issue there. And so it is a operational rule that we have in place.
And the reason it impacts us as opposed to us plus one other station only is because of the configuration of our tracks.
It's the configuration of the way the station lives.
Okay, the configuration of the track. Once the new tracks come in, gone. Okay.
Yeah, it's the station part where you kind of get to, but yes, kind of that combination of that whole layout right there, that physical layout, that's what would change when we grade separate that area.
Any other questions or comments from colleagues? I'll open it up to the public. Would anyone like to offer a comment on the electrification briefing? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Thank you very much. I do think the basically our the lack of questions up here shows that the council basically agrees with Caltrain's recommendation not to restore service until there's grade separation. We recognize that that would take a really bad intersection and not make it any better. So we do appreciate that this remains Caltrain's goal to have service at the Broadway station. And we do think, given what's going on over on our Bayside, that that Broadway station is going to get a lot more use in the future. So we look forward to the day when we have grade separation and we have a functioning weekday train station. Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to really appreciate Caltrain for their partnership on this, but something to celebrate for the public too, as we look ahead to grade separation. We're at about 83% locally funded from city funds, county funds, and state funds. And so we just need about 18% left. Federal government has to come through along with some other grants. It's well within reach, and Caltrain has committed to work very diligently with the Transportation Authority and the city of Burlingame, and we're going to get it done very soon.
Thank you. And thank you for your service on the different mass transit commissions around the peninsula. Okay, that takes us into public comments. This is a chance to speak on items that are not on our agenda. If you're here to speak to an agendized item, I'd ask you to wait for that item. Is there anybody who would like to make a general public comment? I see none in the audience. Is there anybody at home, Madam City Clerk?
We have no hands raised and no emails.
Okay. Then close the public comment. That takes us to our consent calendar. There are a number of items. Would members like to pull the items? I'm going to pull two very briefly, items 10C and 10E. And then Madam City Clerk is a member of the public.
Yes, we have an email for 10D.
Okay. So unless there's other members of the public who'd like to pull anything off consent, I would ask for a motion to approve the items other than C, D, and E.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Ortiz, seconded by Vice Mayor Coulson. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coulson.
Yes.
Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes, so that takes us through the consent calendar. Very briefly, item 8C is a slightly revised policy that we're going to do for public comment. And I just wanted to share that there have been instances across the country of basically people hijacking public comment to spew hate. And we are not going to put up with that. And so we've adopted slightly different rules. This is not a council that likes to gavel people down, and we tend to not to, but somebody's up there talking off topic and in a hateful way, we are not going to allow that to change the way we treat one another. So we are not going to put up with that. And I just wanted to make that public, and that's all I have to say on the matter. Colleagues, any other comments? Since I did pull it off the agenda, I have to ask if anyone in the public wants to speak on this. I see none. Thank you. I make a motion to approve item 10C.
Second.
Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Ortiz. If we could do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coulson.
Yes.
Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes. Thank you, colleagues. That takes us to item 10D, which is a resolution authorizing the purchase of a turf mower for $102,000 and change. This was not pulled by the council, so Madam City Clerk.
Yes, we got an email from Dustin Chase. He says, I am a San Mateo resident who previously commented on a gas leaf blower ban. I'd like to ask you to pause the mower purchase. I recognize city staff research non-fossil fuel options, but I believe their conclusion is mistaken. There are proven electric commercial zero-turn mowers. He attached an 8-minute video. I'll forward everyone the email. In the video, a park maintenance head describes his skepticism of electric tools and how the result won him over. The video is 5 years old and battery technology has advanced greatly since then. I think the Greenworks commercial zero turn mowers are a great option. At a recent tool demo, I talked with the engineer who designed the Greenworks commercial equipment, and I was very impressed. I have no connection with them, so this is my independent opinion. He suggests different mowers. He says there's examples of mowers. And then he says, also, I believe the cities are eligible for the core program. If I'm correct, the city could get the core discount of about $12,500. With the voucher, one of these mowers only costs about $11,000. That seems to me like a very good alternative to the Toro fossil fuel option. With such a large purchase before you, I believe now is the perfect time to invest in an electric future for Burlingame Park maintenance. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for that thoughtful input. I wonder if our city arborist would be willing to join us. Our Director of Park and Rec is absent tonight. This is obviously catching you unawares.
Just a little bit. Thank you, Mayor Brown. Fellow council members. I guess we could take a look at the video at some point, but we did do exhaustive research in terms of wide area mowers. So if you looked at the staff report, I'm actually very proud of the city of Burlingame embracing modern technology and getting away from fossil fuel mowers and other landscape equipment. Unfortunately, at the commercial level for an 11-foot wide mower, we were not able to find something in a battery or electric option. I'm Greenworks, familiar with them. We've been actually purchasing our battery operated mowers from Mean Green. We purchased a 5-foot wide mower 3 years ago. In doing research now for this 11-foot wide, we found that they've now upped it to a 6-foot deck. So we're excited that the next time we are replacing our present fossil fueled 6-foot mowers, we have a viable battery option, but we did not find anything in the 11-foot range. So I'm not sure if that video included that or not. As the San Mateo resident pointed out, that technology is evolving in this area. So we do anticipate that the next time we are replacing a mower, we will have a viable battery or electric option. But at this time, we did not. I know there's a lot of research going on and there's some off brands. We have had excellent luck with Toro brand, very well-known commercial mowers, excellent customer service and getting parts. Mean Green, our one battery powered mower. It's done pretty well. We did have a little bit of an issue in the beginning. You got to wash that grass off, but you also have to keep the battery and electrical components dry. So we're doing our best out there and what the options are available.
Well, thank you. That was very thorough considering you had no expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. Are there any questions that colleagues have for our city arborist, Mr. Holtz? Yes, Vice Mayor Coulson.
Thank you very much for presenting. Would it cause you difficulty if you took this public comment and the suggestion in the video and at least looked at it and we push this back 2 weeks on the agenda?
Not at all. There's no problem with that. As a matter of fact, there is the San Mateo resident mentioned the core program. We've been trying to purchase a lot of our equipment ahead of the January 1st, 2024 deadline for no more fossil fuel equipment under the 27 horsepower. We have placed our order, but we can pull it. We're not going to get this more for 18 months. Things are very far back ordered in the industry. So that's not a problem. We have a placeholder out there.
Thank you. Excellent question. Thank you. I think we can relieve you. Thank you, Mr. Holtz. So is there any other public, I'll open it up for public comment. Would anyone else like to comment on this item? I see none. Is there anybody at home? No, other than the commenter. So Madam Vice Mayor, I'd welcome a motion from you.
So I guess I don't know if it would be, I guess it would be a motion to defer for 2 weeks.
Right.
All right. So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to defer the acquisition of the one wide area turf mower from Turf Western, Fair Western for 2 weeks to allow the staff to research the public comment that was made today and determine if in fact their position remains that this continues to be the best mower. And if in fact it is, then you can bring that back to us at the second meeting in October, and under which time we can consider it for approval.
Make a second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Colson, seconded by Councilmember Beach to defer this item to the next city council meeting. If we could have a roll call.
Councilmember,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think also in that report, I think what might be helpful, because just as a quick aside, I looked into this for Peninsula Clean Energy and asking them if they would consider, rebates on gas mowers, and they felt that it wasn't the most way to optimize dollars for greenhouse gas reduction. So maybe an understanding of the emissions of like this versus that, so we kind of understand and can quantify how much, the carbon impact of it and how long we anticipate, just a little more data around that. Like it's a 5-year life. It'll put this much carbon in, and then we anticipate we'll replace it with electric, just so we kind of respond to the public's question around meeting our greenhouse gas goals. So.
Excellent. So that was a
That's
comment
just a
on that.
comment.
Yep. And so I
so
don't think we did.
motion and
We have a
second?
motion and a second, and we'll do roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Colson,
Yes.
Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes. Okay, that takes us to item 10E. Again, I pulled this and I'll be brief. I just wanted to take note of the fact, and we talked about this a little bit earlier. This has to do with the extension of the contract with Veolia, which manages our city's wastewater. And it makes sure that all the water that goes into the wastewater treatment system from our homes and elsewhere gets treated before it's discharged. So it's really important. It is the 50th anniversary of this partnership. We have the oldest public-private partnership for wastewater treatment in the country, which is kind of cool for a little city like ours. And if you look at the data, you can see how very effective they are from a cost point of view for our residents. So obviously, as scale goes up, some of these costs get diminished on a per gallon basis. But if you look at similar sized wastewater treatment in the Bay Area, we are basically the top performer for somebody at our size, and by an appreciable amount, like 10 to 15% better than the next. And that translates right into rate savings for all of us. So I just wanted to acknowledge Veolia for its longtime partnership with the city of Burlingame and the benefits to the people of Burlingame from this partnership. Are there any other comments? Nope. Any public comment? No.
Oh, back.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, please come and join us. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't recognize that you were here.
That's fine. Honorable Mayor and Council, thanks so much for allowing me to speak. I just want to thank you and give you just a bit of history of my involvement in how this involves Veolia. I've been with Veolia a little over 10 years. That doesn't include a year and a half that I separated from Veolia to go to work for a cheese manufacturer in the Central Valley, which allowed me to get home every night. It was very nice ride. And then about 2 years ago next month, the president of the Central, South, and West regions of Veolia in North America gave me a call and asked me if I'd consider coming back specifically to the Burlingame project. He says, that is our project. We want to keep it our project. Manny, we're counting on you. And I remembered when the first time I was here on this project, another long-term Veolia employee told me when I assumed management of the project, says, Manny, this is very good for you, but remember, you don't want to be the person who lost the Veolia Burlingame contract. And so we've efforted very hard. This project is very important to Veolia, and we work very hard to be affordable. And that can be a challenge, as you all realize, but we managed to do it because of our size and our ability to procure certain items that allow us to keep our costs down. Our major consumption of chemicals, we're basically getting at a 15% lower rate than the Bay Area Chemical Consortium, who bids Bay Area wide, including into the Far East Bay. And it's just because we have over 400 projects in this country alone.
Hmm.
And these are the benefits and the cost savings we pass along. So thank you for recognizing us. We want to recognize the city of Burlingame as well. Back in 1972, this was just unheard of territory. And you struck out anyway. And as I've learned from the staff through my years of involvement here, the city is not hesitant to step out on new technology that makes business sense. You have to combine the two. And the city staff has done very well, and the council as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Mhm.
We also have a hand raised.
Oh,
Remotely. No. Online.
online.
Mhm. So Melissa, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
My name is Melissa Sambold. I am the Vice President that oversees this project. Manny is one of my staff. I wanted to reiterate Manny's comments on how important the city of Burlingame is to Veolia, but more importantly, the long-term partnership. This really has been a true partnership. We cannot say enough about the relationship between the Public Works Group and Veolia in solving problems. They asked some very insightful questions during this negotiations to get to this point, asking for further transparency, reassuring, they wanted reassurance that we were looking at succession planning, at redundancy, at all kinds of information and efficiency projects, as Manny said, bringing you the best possible deals so that you can pass this on to each and every one of your ratepayers. So again, I just want to reiterate how much we appreciate the efforts that go into this partnership on the Burlingame side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sandfold, for joining us. Are there any other comments, Madam City Clerk?
That's it.
Okay, in that case, then I'd welcome a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the resolution approving the renewal of the agreement with Veolia.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Stevenson, seconded by Vice Mayor Coulson. If we could do a roll call.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coulson.
Yes.
Mayor Brownback.
Yes. Thank you, members of the public. I do realize people are here for an item a little bit later, and we will move to that as soon as we can. I was remiss in thanking a couple of public servants. One of the consent items was $1 million for this city to begin studying how to use reclaimed water better, and that was thanks to Senator Becker's efforts up in Sacramento to get us that. That initiative to look at reclaimed water was something the council decided earlier this year was an important initiative for our city and the people of Burlingame. So thank you, Senator Becker. And then I just want to call out and thank our former colleagues, Mayor Stone of Belmont, Mayor Goethals of San Mateo, for joining us tonight. We look forward to working with you, and thank you so much for setting up shop in Burlingame. We are grateful to have you here in our city. That takes us to public hearings, and the first public hearing is an ordinance to change the parking on California Drive. Is this over to our wonderful head of Public Works?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is to essentially staff is recommending the council conduct a public hearing to introduce an ordinance amending chapter 13.36.010 and 13.36.020 of the Burlingame Municipal Code to remove parking restriction on east side of California Drive between Carmelita and Sanchez Avenue, and establish parking restriction on east side of California Drive between Carmelita to Oak Grove, such that there is no parking overnight from 12:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. And the procedures for introducing the ordinance are included in the staff report. I won't go into those details as council does this very routinely. With a brief background, as part of California Drive Complete Streets Project, otherwise known as California Drive Bicycle Improvements Project, a class 4 bicycle lane was added on the east side of the street with a road diet in both directions. The addition of bicycle lanes on California Drive resulted in removal of parking on the west side of California Drive between Carmelita and Broadway. In order to address that, staff provided, project provided parking on east side of California Drive between Carmelita and Sanchez. The current code is outdated and needs to be updated in order to allow this parking. And that's the reason we are here tonight. Staff presented the recommendations at the September 14th, 2023 Traffic Safety Commission meetings. And the presentations included options for potential parking restrictions on the east side of California Drive. As part of the public outreach efforts, over 150 public meeting notices were sent out and also hand delivered to individual businesses. As part of the walkthrough, staff was able to speak with many businesses, and most of them supported overnight parking restrictions. And also most people supported long-term daytime parking because they're employees and they would like to retain that long-term parking. Staff presented 4 options, which are included in staff report. I won't go through the details, just briefly summarizing them. Option A included overnight parking restriction, as I mentioned before, between 12:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. And staff also provided additional 3 options to have daytime restrictions as well. Option B included 2-hour parking restrictions. Option C included 4-hour restriction, and option D included 10-hour restrictions. After considerable discussion and reviewing presentation, the commission voted 4-0 to recommend overnight parking restrictions and did not make a motion to support other restrictions. The commission determined that overnight parking restriction would adequately address the current issues of overnight parking, but essentially folks leaving their cars parked extended period of time, and removing overnight parking or restricting overnight parking would actually help in that regard, while also allowing the employees of businesses to be able to park, which they currently do. If approved, the recommendations, the relevant chapters of the Burlingame Municipal Codes, as mentioned above, will be updated. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the Director of Public Works? I see none. I'm going to just open it up to the public. Mr. Murtuza, is there anybody here who'd like to comment on this change to the California Drive parking?
I have 2 emails.
Okay, let's move to the emails.
The first email is from George. He says, "My name is George. I'm a Peninsula attorney and local resident who frequently uses California Drive. The change from California Drive to 1 lane in each direction between Broadway and Burlingame Ave is the most poorly thought out plan that has ever been executed. Particularly going south from Broadway to Burlingame Ave, there is now a single traffic lane, and businesses on this side of the street frequently have delivery trucks blocking that single traffic lane, forcing traffic to go into the median lane. This has created a tremendous safety issue. Further, I understand there's a plan to remove all parking on the west side of California Drive where the businesses are located. This will cause significant economic impacts to these businesses who already have extremely limited parking in front of their storefronts. I understand this entire project was to provide for a bike lane, but there are much better locations for a bike lane along California Drive, particularly since the eucalyptus trees are being cleared out near the Caltrain property. A completely separate bike path could be built in that area that is off the roadway completely and much safer for bikers and will not impact vehicle traffic. I also understand that there is a bike lane on Carolyn, 1 street parallel from California Drive, making this bike lane project redundant, as it is just 1 block parallel from an existing bike lane. I cannot believe any resident input was given to this plan, as it seems 90% of people are opposed to the narrowing of California Drive on this small stretch, which does not improve safety for bicyclists or pedestrians, but actually makes it much more dangerous. I not only fear the impending lawsuit which will occur, I can virtually assure that that will be the end result. There's still time to revise this plan, revert to 2 lanes of traffic in both directions from Broadway to Burlingame Ave along California, and put back parking on both sides of California Drive. For the bicyclists, create a dedicated bike path where the eucalyptus trees are located adjacent to Caltrain, or improve the existing bike path on Carolyn. The second email comes to us from Benito. He says, the parking that the city is taking away are metered spaces with 2 hour, 1 hour, and 24-minute time limits, which worked well for years for the businesses with short-term parking needs. There was continual parking turnover and each space served many parkers every day. And yes, although some but not all of the businesses have off-street lots, UPS, FedEx, and Amazon trucks use the curb space to make deliveries, something they can no longer do and will cause reoccurring problems. Meanwhile, the parking the city is replacing it with is diagonally across the street and won't have time limits, except for no overnight parking. It's difficult to see this as an in-kind replacement. For what it's worth, the reason that this item is even on the agenda so late is because it was an oversight on the part of the consultant. They neglected the parking was actually not allowed by the city code and so needed an ordinance. The consultant also only now realized that the parking being given back would just become long-term multi-day parking spaces. The same way the consultant neglected that left turns were going to be denied to businesses and Maverick Jacks, and that the parking removal was not fully vetted with the businesses, and that the left turns into and off California are now problematic. At any rate, one thing the consultant and this ordinance do not address is that the city code requires that parking meters be in place in front of businesses between Broadway and Carmelita. It is right there on BMC chapter 13.40.10-A3. Says parking shall be regulated by parking meters. That section is still in place and needs to be officially repealed for the city to be able to legally remove these metered spaces. I hope this is helpful and that the relevant discussion is had on this issue. And that's it.
Thank you for that. I actually think the first comment was not exactly on topic, only because that was really a comment about the entire plan, which we've debated and discussed at great length. This particular item tonight is simply trying to change the nature of parking in one stretch of California. That said, it remains a project that everyone's paying a lot of attention to, and certainly the city is mindful. We think that it's going to make the road safer, but we need to see it in action. So if there are no other comments, then I will close the public hearing. And colleagues, are there any other comments, or otherwise would somebody like to make a motion to introduce the order? Yes, Vice Mayor Coulson.
I just have a quick question to Director Martuza. So as we continue to make adjustments, fine adjustments on this along the way, when will we get sort of a report out or an update on the performance of the project?
Again, as we planned this project, this is a major change from 4-lane traffic to 2-lane traffic with one left turn lane and a major bike lane. It's going to take some time for the public to get adjusted, new traffic patterns. I do recall when we did the roundabout, we had just similar complaints, but eventually people got used to it and it's much safer. There are definitely still concerns of some people not following the rules. But I say, using that as an example, I would say at least we should let 6 months to a year go by. And while we do that, staff plans to monitor the changes and issues that may come out and make tweaks as we go forward. And there may be changes to parking, there may be changes to striping, there could be changes that we did not even anticipate. So staff will keep this project on our radar as a high priority project, and then we'll report back to council. I would say at least we should have 6 to 9 months of time to allow for adjustment. Yes, Councilmember Beach.
No, thank you. And I appreciate the Public Works Director being here and the work of the Traffic Safety Parking Commission to vet the different options A, B, C, D. I do think, I respect the work of the commission. I think it'll be important to observe how this plays out, not only for the infrastructure, but the parking limits. It's not rocket science. The more we meter or the shorter time limits that exists, that means there's more turnover, and that tends to be better for businesses and for customers to come in and out versus longer parking that's just an overnight restriction will have employees parking there long-term. It'll be harder for customers to come by. So we'll see what people really want after we try it out for a little while. But I just caution that economics can be used to drive behavior. So let's observe and learn and see how it plays out. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And the only comment I would make is this has received, as we all know, a lot of controversy. The council made a decision after a lot of analysis that this was a way to make the streets safer. I would ask if it's possible that when we come back to assess this, we're not basing it on anecdotes. And so to the extent that we can either have cameras or counters or something that creates data rather than anecdotes, we'll have a better conversation in 6 months or 9 months. It's really important because otherwise it's the one accident that everyone remembers and not the number of vehicles that get through the road safely and so forth. So appreciate that. I'm still looking for a motion. Oh, sorry,
I'll do-
Vice Mayor Cole.
Go ahead, go ahead. Did you-
No,
You-
do we need to have?
we need a motion to waive further reading and introduce
No,
ordinance? No?
no, now we need to, we did,
Introduce the ordinance.
now we just need to bring it back
Oh, we need to bring it back. Okay.
A motion to bring it back, correct?
So
for a second reading.
move to bring back the ordinance
Thank you,
for the reading.
Councilmember Ortiz. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Stevenson. If we can have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coulson,
Yes.
Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. We have just one more item before the last item. And that has to do with changing CEQA, our CEQA process, which is not as hard as it sounds, I think.
And I'll be taking this one. So I have a very short presentation on this. So what staff is proposing for the council to consider tonight is a amendment to our planning regulations to amend them to allow for the collection of deposits in order to have a fuller cost recovery capture system. So right now, the city the city code only authorizes the imposition of a flat fee to collect the city to recover the cost city's resources in processing the planning application. But what is more typical in the market out there is for the city to also allow for the city to also collect a deposit in order to charge the actual cost of the city's services in order to more fully capture its costs. So as you can see from the table in the staff report, most of the, several jurisdictions here in San Mateo County do both a cost recovery system through fees as well as deposits. So what we're proposing right now is in market with what other jurisdictions in our county do. So in order to provide for a deposit feature as part of our cost recovery, we have to bring this ordinance amendment to you. And so that's what we're doing. And I'm here for any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the city attorney? I see none. I'll open up for public comment. Anybody in the public? I see none. Madam Clerk,
We don't have any email.
no public comment. So obviously a pretty straightforward item. Unless there's further comment from colleagues, I'd welcome a motion.
A motion to, let's see if I got this right here. Motion to introduce an ordinance amending chapter 26.62 and 25.108 of Title 25 of Burlingame Municipal Code, application processing procedures, CEQA determination.
And then you
Second.
want it for a second reading, right?
We want it for, yes. Second.
A motion by the vice mayor as improved by the city clerk. Second by Councilmember Beach, if we could do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Beach.
Yes.
The lovely Vice Mayor Coulson.
Thank you, yes.
Mayor Brownrigg.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for that good work. That takes us now to item 12A. I think the reason most of you are here. This is a batch of items that have to do one way or another with smoking and tobacco. And is it you, Mr. City Attorney, or Mr. Spansil, our Deputy City Attorney?
Gardner.
And also,
It's a
Mr.
group project.
So I'm going to let you guys run through the staff report, but I'm just going to signal ahead of time that there are really 4 discrete items tonight, and I'm going to start us on the retail permit question and then bring us back to the Broadway, Burlingame, hookah questions. I'd like to dispose of the structural procedural point first, but please take it away, Mr. Gardner.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Brownrigg, members of the council. I'm Kevin Gardner, Community Development Director, and this has been a joint effort with the City Attorney's Office. So Assistant City Attorney Scott Spansale will also be making some presentations here. We're here to discuss a variety of smoking-related regulations. Next slide, please. Where this started was a discussion of a ban of outdoor smoking in the Broadway Commercial District. This was a request by merchants in that district through their business improvement district. And their main concerns were basically smoke on the sidewalks and then kind of wafting into the stores. You want to keep the doors open to attract business. So that was a concern that they had. The council approved a restriction or ban on a pilot basis. And that's one of the questions tonight, but just for context to explain, that's kind of how a lot of these conversations started. Next, please. And just a quick slide that shows at the time as a fairly minor amendment to our municipal code just to allow this very discreet smoking ban in the Broadway district. Next. But we are looking at a kind of suite of different smoking related items. One is related to the Broadway outdoor smoking ban. It was a pilot program with a sunset at the end of this year. So the council had asked to come back for a report and also to consider it for a more long-term or permanent status. At the same time, there was interest when we were talking about Broadway that some people said, what about downtown? And when downtown we refer to as the Burlingame Avenue Commercial District or Downtown Business Improvement District. So should there be a similar ban in downtown? Then there's kind of in parallel, and these are really separate discussions, but we're here all tonight, is there has been interest in allowing hookah, which is a form of flavored tobacco consumption, gaining popularity. There's a number of different business enterprises here on the peninsula that offer hookah. So there was questions as to whether to allow. It would require amendments to our current flavored tobacco regulations, but we want to have that discussion. And then last but not least was the tobacco retailer permit, which we can discuss first. Next, please. So this is pretty hard to see on the screen, but we conducted a survey to get community sentiment. So this is a screenshot of the SurveyMonkey survey that was administered from September 15th until yesterday. I want to thank our economic development specialist, Joe Sanfilippo, for administering this. We kept it till the 11th hour, which was yesterday, so that we could get the most responses and allow people plenty of opportunities to respond. We received just shy of 400 responses, 399 to be exact. Next, please. In terms of who responded, that first bar are the businesses that are in the Broadway Commercial District. And just to kind of back up here, we wanted to ask people first, which group do you fall into? And then this allows us to then sort some of the responses based on who's answering the question. So 9% of the respondents were from the Broadway Commercial District. Next bar is 8%, which are from the Downtown Business Improvement District. We also allowed, if there was a business in Burlingame that was in neither of those districts, they could respond. So 2% of the responses came from there. Residents were very interested in this. We put this on the e-news for 2 weeks in a row, plus Nextdoor, plus social media, and maybe some other places too. So 58% of the responses came from people who identified as Burlingame residents. And then last but not least, 23% are people who don't live in Burlingame or have a business in Burlingame but are interested in Burlingame. So those might be customers. Those are, as we know, both Broadway and downtown Burlingame are regional draws. So this could be some of the people who like to spend time in Burlingame. They just don't happen to fit into one of those other categories. Next. So first, we're going to go through 2 rounds of this. The first is just all of the responses together, and then we're going to parse it a little bit by each respondent group. So just looking at the whole group of 399 responses. First of all, are you aware of the Broadway smoking ban? Turns out 79% of the respondents were aware of it. So it seems like it's pretty well known. Next. Second question is, do you think the city should make the pilot program in Broadway permanent? That would permanently ban smoking in outdoor areas around the Broadway Business District. And 56% of the respondents said yes, 44% said no. Next. Next question was, do you think the city should expand the outdoor smoking ban to the Burlingame Avenue Commercial District? Kind of similar, 57% yes, 43% no. Next. Then would you support an exception to the city's flavored tobacco ban that would allow hookah businesses to sell flavored tobacco to adults for immediate consumption to smoke hookah within a building or outdoors on private property? That's a wordy question, but and in fact, the actual survey question also described what hookah was, in case people didn't know what it was. So 65% of the respondents said yes, they would support that, and 35% said no. Next. So who supports what? That's what people want to know. That's why we asked everybody in the first question, are you a business? Are you a resident? Are you just somebody who likes to be in Burlingame? Next. So in terms of the way I've structured this is these are the questions, and we're basically saying who says yes to each question. So this is not the percentage of people answering the question like a pie chart. This is out of each respondent group who is saying yes. So first of all, are you aware of the city's pilot program among the business owners in Broadway? Not surprisingly, 97% are familiar with it. Burlingame Avenue, 65% are familiar with it. In other businesses, 78. Residents are 81% familiar with it, and people not in Burlingame are still pretty familiar with it, 70%. So it's not
It's incredibly high awareness considering it hasn't been in effect that long.
That's true, yes. Next, please. In terms of should it be permanent in Broadway, among Broadway businesses, there's 69% for it to be support for permanent. Within downtown, this is downtown businesses talking about Broadway, saying that 70% would support it in Broadway. The business owners not in either of the areas were 38%. I don't want to discredit that category, but there's only 9 responses. So when you start doing percentages of it kind of makes it sound.
Yeah.
So, but again, of those 3 out of the 9 said yes. Residents of Burlingame, 56% support the permanence, and those who are not residents or businesses in Burlingame, just exactly 50% support a permanent ban. Next, please. Moving to Burlingame Avenue, among the Broadway, kind of funny, you could have each merchant group kind of talk about the others. And so the Broadway merchants say that 69% would support a permanent ban in the downtown Burlingame Avenue area. Among the downtown Burlingame Avenue merchants or businesses, it's 74% support. Among those other business owners, 44% or 4 individuals, and residents, 56% would support a smoking ban in downtown Burlingame. And then again, 50% exactly of people who come to visit us here or are interested in Burlingame. Next. In terms of supporting a change to the city's flavored tobacco regulations to allow hookah under the regulations that are required by state law. Among the Broadway Business District, there was 42% for allowing that. A little more support in downtown Burlingame, 52%. Among the business owners who are in neither district, 67% or 6 people. Residents, 61% of folks identifying themselves as residents of Burlingame would support this change to allow hookah. And of people that are from outside the city and either visiting or doing commerce here, 88% would support allowing hookah. So these are the same questions as before. At this point, I hand it over to our Assistant City Attorney to talk about all the legal stuff. So if there's any questions, ideally we could take it all together, but Scott will provide a little bit more context for some of these discussions.
So if I might ask you, Mr. Spansale, in light of the way I'd like to stage this, should we ask you to speak to the permit program first and have a conversation about that and then go to the more local questions? Or do you want to do the whole presentation up front? What would be better for you?
I think the whole presentation up front, that'll allow a more robust public comment period about all of it. And then you can certainly take it as you'd like.
Okay.
During the presentation. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. As Mr. Gardner just did a great job of explaining, there is a lot of community feedback that we've received on this topic. And obviously you can see here today, we've got a lot of people who care very deeply about these. So thank you very much for that. We do want to always reiterate, these are the 4 questions that we have before you today. So we're asking for direction on each of those 4. They are a little bit interrelated, and the landscape of the law, both at the local level and state level, really inform what we can and can't do as well. So that's what I'm hoping to present today, is talk about what we can do, what we can't do, so that you can have a robust debate. Next slide, please. So where does the authority for the city council come to regulate smoking? It comes from our police power. And I just put some quotes in here because I think it's important to realize when we're looking at regulating something like smoking, we're doing so because it has to have a reasonable, it has to be reasonably related to a legitimate government purpose, which is usually to promote public health and safety. And that's what we're doing here today. And since secondhand smoke has been something that's been repeatedly shown to be a health hazard, that's something that's within the city council's purview to regulate, to make sure that the general public is safe from that effect. But that authority to regulate is not unlimited. So that's why we're going to talk about a few things here today. Next slide. So our current city regulations are in chapter 8.18 of the Burlingame Municipal Code. If you look through it, it is a little bit outdated. When we bring this back to you for potential updates, we will fix some of those, and I'll talk a little bit about them later. But none of them are really controversial. They're more just to update to make sure that we're in compliance with state law, ensuring that things like marijuana are grouped with tobacco going forward, and that we're not treating one sort of smoking different than the other. We also have, as Mr. Gardner put out earlier, the Broadway smoking ban, which is set to expire on December 31st of this year. And then we also have our flavored tobacco ban, which was passed a couple of years ago. And there's recent pass by the state with SB 793. We'll talk about that too. Next slide, please. So what are the state laws? Because that's going to be something that we really need to look at as we determine what Burlingame would like to do here, because we can't contradict state law. We can do things that are a little more strict. We can do things that require additional regulation, but we can't directly contradict what the state says because they do. So the main law on this is California's Clean Indoor Air Law. It was most recently updated in 2016. It's actually from back in the 90s, but in 2016, there was a major overhaul. And it's in Labor Code 6404.5 for anyone who'd like to read about it more in detail. But generally, it says that no employer can knowingly or intentionally permit, and no one's allowed to engage in, smoking inside an enclosed workspace. It also prohibits smoking in offices as well as indoor bars and restaurants. And a lot of that is tied back, as this is a labor code law, it's tied back that these are workplaces, bars, restaurants, they are workplaces. So anywhere enclosed, even though they're selling food and it's not a traditional office as we might think of it, it's still a workplace that the labor code fits into. And then more recently, just last year, flavored tobacco ban, State Senate Bill 793, put a ban on flavored tobacco all throughout California. So a lot of local jurisdictions in the area had put on their own bans, Burlingame included. Now the state has followed suit, and they have said now we are doing a full flavored tobacco ban. But what's important, and what we'll talk about here later today, is they gave cities the ability to make an exemption for hookah, for shisha tobacco. So that's what we're going to be considering as one of our pieces today. Do we want to go that direction, or do we want to continue our flavored tobacco ban, which currently does ban hookah tobacco as well, all tobacco products? Next slide, please. So what are the exceptions to the state law? And I apologize, I know a lot of this is already in the staff report, but I do want to make sure that, we go over the major parts of it. So there are a comprehensive list of exceptions in the labor code, but the big one, the big ones that you normally see are retail or wholesale tobacco shops or private smokers lounges. And what's kind of important here, and you can see I italicized a portion of the language that's used to define those. A retail or wholesale tobacco shop, the main purpose of that shop has to be to sell tobacco. And in a private smokers lounge, which is actually attached to a retail tobacco shop, it has to be dedicated to the use of tobacco products. And you pull that out of a dictionary and it doesn't mean much, but the California AG back in 2011 said, what we take that to mean is that if you were trying to say that you're a retail or wholesale tobacco shop or that you're a private smokers lounge, you can't do anything else. You can't be a restaurant. You can't serve food. You can't serve drink. You can't serve alcohol because you're dedicated or your main purpose is to sell tobacco. Again, this is only talking about indoor spaces, but if someone wants to have a smokers lounge inside their shop, they can't serve alcohol. They can't serve food. It's not a restaurant. That doesn't necessarily play to outdoor spaces. We'll talk a little bit about the interplay with our current pilot smoking ban, but right now that doesn't necessarily apply to outdoor spaces. Next slide, please. So what are the state law exemptions for hookah? Well, we just talked about it a little bit. SB 793 provides an exemption to the state ban for hookah, but they put in a couple extra rules. They said not only is this not allowed if the city doesn't allow it, but they also have to have a valid license to sell tobacco like everyone else would in any other tobacco shop. And they also have to make sure that whatever area is used to smoke hookah has to be only accessible to 21 and over. So if a restaurant wanted to have a portion of their restaurant to be a smoker's lounge, that portion cannot allow 21 or 20 and younger into the restaurant. Sorry, into the smoker's lounge portion of the restaurant. But the rest of the restaurant could take place. The retailer must also comply with all other state and local laws relating to the sale of tobacco. Why that's important is right now we do have a flavored tobacco ban that includes hookah. So of course, if we ban it, it can't be allowed just because the state makes an exemption for it. Next slide, please. And then finally, the consideration of a tobacco retailer permit program. This is something that the mayor brought to our attention recently. It's actually been undertaken by a lot of neighboring jurisdictions, including San Mateo, San Carlos, where here the San Mateo County has made a program, has created a model ordinance that's really aimed at ensuring that tobacco retailers don't sell to minors. They want to make sure that 17-year-olds aren't able to go into stores and purchase tobaccos from a tobacco retailer. So what they've said is any city who wants to adopt our ordinance, which has these stiffer penalties, which creates a permitting program for tobacco retailers or smoke shops, that the county will enforce and administer that program. So as long as we adopt their ordinance wholesale, make no adjustments to it, they would then do the permitting program, which will admittedly charge a few $100s to those tobacco retailers to register. And it will also stiffen penalties if they do any underage sales or other similar issues. In this law, in addition to larger fines for violators, there's also things like distance requirements. So a tobacco store would not be allowed to go next to a playground. There's already some restrictions in state law about that, but this will enhance them. It'll make sure that there's more distance. It'll make sure that have a line of tobacco retailers right next to each other. There will be certain people that those in existence now would be able to continue to do it, but anyone who's coming in to try to do a new program, they're not going to be able to do that anymore. So if the city were to adopt the model ordinance again, the county would administer it. Next slide, please. And we bring it back to the questions for consideration just because, next slide, we want to go into each one and talk about what we should really be thinking about. So for the outdoor smoking bans, the pilot program, and talking about whether we should make it permanent or whether we should expand it to Burlingame Avenue or any other commercial districts that the council deems fit, we need to ask, should this ban include private unenclosed restaurant bar spaces? Because as it's written right now, the entirety of the unenclosed spaces of the Broadway commercial business district, smoking is not allowed in those. Again, the city is on an educational approach right now. We understand this can change, and this is something that the council can certainly look at. But as it's written right now, all unenclosed spaces, including private patios in the back of a restaurant or a bar, typically would not allow, or sorry, not typically, under this rule, would not be allowed to have smoking on their deck. I did put in a few examples, Palo Alto and Walnut Creek, which were a little bit of a model for us as we kind of built this program because they've had these programs in for some amount of time. They do actually ban smoking in those private patio areas. And a couple of them even do it for 25 feet within the enclosed spaces where it wouldn't be permitted. So they do have stricter rules. But again, that's just for the council's consideration. San Mateo has that as well. Next slide, please. And then we have to look to see whether the city should expand the flavored tobacco ban. It would allow an exception for hookah use. So I'm assuming you're going to hear a lot of public comment on this today. As you do, know that if the exemption is granted, the hookah stills are still going to require the retailer to get a state tobacco license. They're only going to be allowed to permit 21 and over into their restaurant. And if it's an indoor hookah lounge, the retailer would have to qualify as a retail tobacco store or a smoker's lounge. So those things we talked about earlier to the state rules, they would have to do those. They would have to not sell food, not sell liquor, not sell any drink. It would be purely dedicated to the use of hookah if it was indoors. If it's outdoors, the retailer would have to follow whatever restrictions that the city has put in place. Right now, for example, we do have the Broadway smoking ban for outdoor spaces. So in that district right now, a hookah lounge would not be allowed to have a deck patio where hookah was smoked. But they could still qualify as of now to have an indoor ban as long as they followed the permitting processes for the smoker's lounge or the retail tobacco. Next slide, please. And finally, and I think first up on the plate, should the city pursue a tobacco retailer program? I've put a couple of potential benefits and potential drawbacks here. County enforcement and administration of the program is something that we think is a strong benefit to us. Stricter punishments for violators who sell tobacco to minors is certainly something that we support. But there are the costs that you potentially lose a little bit of that control at the city level because you're having the county administer the program. And there's additional requirements and costs for the tobacco retailers. And that concludes my presentation. Mr. Gardner and I are here for questions, but otherwise we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spanshill and Mr. Gardner for those presentations. I think we've all found on council running meetings like this that when you have a very complicated and multifaceted issue, it helps to break it into bits. And so that's why I'm going to propose that we start with the tobacco retailer permit. I will probably allow a couple of different points for public input, so please don't feel you have to. There will be more than one bite at the apple. So if you want to speak on the permit program with bigger question, by all means, and then you can speak again, but there will be more than one opportunity. So I'd like to start with what I think is a broader and maybe less controversial question about whether we should adopt the San Mateo County proposed permit program. And the only addition I would make to the city attorney's good overview is that in two recent stings, 25%, in one sting, 25% of minors who claim to be not a minor were sold tobacco, and another one 10% were. So clearly there is a lot of selling to minors going on. And the difference between a permit program versus just a fine is that ultimately, just like an alcohol permit, if you are not behaving well, your permit can be pulled. And that's a big difference. So that to me is the principal difference between a permit program and the current regime that we have. So with that in mind, I open it up first to my colleagues for questions. If there are any.
Can we go back to the permit slide? I think that'd be helpful.
Sure. The first one or the last one?
The one on which we have to make.
The one that had other communities.
Mhm. Or just what the permit entails. Mhm. I have a couple.
Yeah, please go ahead. So on the permit program.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yes, Vice Mayor Colson.
So one of the limitations on the permit program is distance and distance from parks and children. And so we do have some downtown parks and we do have some schools that are closed. So and realizing we can ask a lot of questions, maybe we don't resolve, but you know what we need to come back with. I would like to understand more about, and there's also a requirement around 2 retailers maybe not being. So if there's 2 existing retailers, say for example, on Broadway, and then there's a hookah sales across the street, What, sorry, Megan, I know you need to hear me better. If there are two existing, how do you, and you put you can't have any within 100 feet of one another and they already are. How do you arbitrate that? Or do you just allow the ones that are there to stay?
If they're existing, it shouldn't be an issue. I'll look into that and confirm
Okay,
as
so
we bring this.
Existing, so if there's a retailer and then another retailer across on Broadway, for example, you can look into that.
Yeah.
And then we have one tobacco retailer on Broadway and one on Burlingame Avenue. So I would like to know if these restrictions with regard to proximity to parks and schools, if we would be impacting any of those or in violation.
Will do. Thank you.
Madam City Clerk, I think there was a slide before this that actually just described the permit.
Yes,
program.
that's it.
There we go. No, that's hookah.
Oh, no.
There we go.
Yeah, go back. There you go. There you go.
No, that's like pros and cons, but I think they created one that one.
Mhm.
There we go. Any other questions or comments for our city staff with respect to the permit program?
No,
Nope.
And Mr. Mayor, one thing I did want to clarify just for the audience here today is this is more of an information only. We're looking for direction, but obviously no action is going to be taken today because all of these would require an ordinance to make any changes to our current law.
Thank you for that clarification. That's very helpful. Yes, Councilmember Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the costs or potential costs, you noted potential less city control. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. The potential costs, I believe it's about a $285 permit fee that the county uses to ensure that they're able to enforce and administer the program. So that's an additional cost over whatever the state requires the tobacco retailers to get. I'm not sure about that cost right now. There may be people in this room who can tell you. In terms of loss of city control, I think Vice Mayor Colson kind of brought up a point earlier about the distance, right? You know, the distance between potential tobacco retailers, distance potentially away from playgrounds. If we adopt the county ordinance, we are not allowed to make any adjustments to that. If we try to make our own tobacco retailer program, we could find limits that we find are more comfortable for our jurisdiction. If we go with the county, more one size fits all, but we gain the benefit of the county administering the program.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Spancel. I am going to open it up to the
okay,
public.
can I?
Oh, yes, please.
So one quick clarification. So I'm a little confused, so I'm sorry.
Mhm.
If we go with the county program, then we don't get to do exemptions or like with the questions that the vice mayor was asking about an existing business that's already within proximity to a park or to each other. That we would not be able to accommodate. They would just have to fall in with everybody else.
There are exemptions already in the county's ordinance, so adopting it would have some built-in exemptions, but we wouldn't be able to amend the rules and requirements that they are there.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
Seeing no other questions, I will open it up to the public at this point. So if you would like to comment on whether the city of Burlingame ought to adopt a permit program for retail tobacco sales, then please come and join us. Yes, sir, please.
Good evening, City Council and staff. My name is Edward Schlesinger, and I'm a member of the San Mateo County Tobacco Education Coalition. I'm not a resident of Burlingame, but I am a former smoker, and I used to smoke with my friends outside the coffee shop on Burlingame Avenue, which is now where the Blue Line Pizza is. I'm here to urge the council to adopt the county's tobacco retailer permit program because this ordinance helps keep cigarettes and, most importantly, vape out of the hands of youth. As I mentioned, I was one of those youth who's smoking before the age of 18, and it was the easy access to tobacco which paved the way to a smoking addiction. The county's model ordinance helps restrict youth access to tobacco and e-cigarettes with enhanced inspection and enforcement protocols, penalties for retailers who violate the ordinance, and uniform standards for tobacco policy across San Mateo County. So we urge your help and thank you for making the peninsula a healthier place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on this particular aspect? Please come and join us.
We have two.
Hi, I'm Trisha Barr. And I'm the mom of 3 teen boys, ages 13, 17, and 19. I'm also on site council and PTA. I'm a volunteer co-chair of the San Mateo County Tobacco Education Coalition. And I'm really concerned for my kids and all of our youth. You have a current ordinance in your city, I live on the peninsula, that does not allow for the sale of any flavored tobacco. However, it's not being enforced. In fact, I know this firsthand because tonight, before the meeting, I went to a local retailer and I bought these flavored tobacco products, which are not only prohibited for sale in Burlingame, but they're prohibited for sale in the state of California. So that tells me that your current ordinance, no matter how much city control you have, is not being enforced. And youth are getting these products. All you have to do is ask your principals. So I'm urging you to take a stand against tobacco and adopt the county's strong ordinance for the retail tobacco ordinance. With it, the county will manage the permits, as you said, and they'll also do 2 compliance checks per year. They'll also work with your staff to do youth decoy operations. And there'll be meaningful penalties and fines when retailers are caught selling products that they shouldn't be. Please join San Mateo and San Carlos that have just adopted in the last few weeks the ordinance that the county just adopted in the last few months. I also, we get to come back for other things, so I'll focus on this right now. I read an alarming quote from Brian King of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control that sums it up when it comes to addicting kids with tobacco. Advertising and social media can bring the horse to water. The flavors will get them to drink. And the nicotine will keep them coming back for more. You as a city council have a chance to be on different sides of history. Do you want to be on the side of history that caters to companies that profit off tobacco and getting people addicted to tobacco products? Or do you want to be on the side of history that's for protecting youth and public health? It's up to you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor Brownrigg, members of the council. My name is Edith Kabuslai. I work for San Mateo County Health. And I just wanted to clarify related to the tobacco retail license ordinance, it is for new retailers. Existing retailers stay as they are. It is for new applications that the ordinance would put like the distance requirements on. I hope that answers the question.
All right. Very helpful. Are there any other comments in the audience? Yes, please.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
My name is Aitik Naksoy.
Could you come a little closer to the microphone?
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Councilor. My name is Aitik Naksoy. I would like to talk about the ordinance that we were talking about tonight. And then I'm a local business owner. And as you guys see on the survey results, we've been always also supporting the smoking ban on the street, but also the people that we were asking that they come up with like a flavored tobacco, which we have the tobacco license from the states, and we are asking the idea every single individual whoever comes our place to smoke the hookah. And we've been sending some emails. I also bring like some documents for the record, and you guys might receive some emails from the people who are supporting us. And there are some people at the audience, and we have about like 10 people, they just want to talk about it. So
we're definitely going to get there. I'm just trying to keep us focused on one chapter of
Yeah.
the four-part thing.
Mhm.
So did you have a comment about the permit program?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, that we are supporting the smoking ban on the street, but as a small business owner, that I have 3 businesses in the city of Burlingame that providing over 100 people employment, that we are just asking ordinance at our business.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will come back to that too.
Good evening, council members. My name is Blythe Young. I'm the Community Advocacy Director for the American Heart Association and San Mateo County Tobacco Education Co-Chair with Trisha Barr. I'm here tonight because I've spent the past 5 years specializing in tobacco retail enforcement and ordinances and policy. For the last 3 years, I worked on the policy that is now the model of the county to get them from a self-report to 2 proactive compliance checks per year. This was a lot of work. It was all with the intention of incorporated jurisdictions adopting the county match. As you mentioned, adopting the county match means you cannot deviate from the policy. You must take it in its entirety, including the full comprehensive flavored tobacco sales restriction. You're already well poised to match the county in that you already have a full flavors policy. You've had it for 2 years. For the last 2 years in the city of Burlingame, businesses have continued to sell flavored tobacco, including some of the businesses that are here this evening. So I wouldn't suggest weakening your policy, missing out on the county enforcing your policy that you already have in full with all of your businesses, protecting youth, which I think was your original intent, and protecting Burlingame residents, giving them the same protections as residents of San Mateo, your neighbor, San Carlos, and unincorporated San Mateo County. So please don't weaken your policy. Please move forward with adopting the match. It's worth it. And I like to think it's worth it because I spent 3 years fighting tooth and nail for the language included. So I'll be here back up to talk about the other pieces in your policy, but it's all kind of interrelated in terms of if you don't adopt the match, you can exempt. If you do adopt the match, you won't. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Any other comments on this particular part of the evening's conversation? If not, are there any? 2 hands up. Yes, please.
First hand that I'll unmute is Brian. Go ahead. Brian.
Hi. Yes, my name is Brian Davis. I have a prepared speech for the hookah section, but I guess I can wait on that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let me just jump in and just winging it here as far as the tobacco retail license. That there's hundreds of cities and counties all over California that have adopted tobacco retail licenses. The great thing about a tobacco retail license is that it really, when it's effectively managed, it can really reduce illegal sales to youth. We just see this all over the state and in communities that have adopted these policies. When they do that, when they're enforced, that makes a big difference in reducing those illegal sales. And it's also important that tobacco retail licenses do what the county's license does, which is it has some teeth in it, in that when retailers are caught selling illegal products or selling to underage youth, that they could have their license suspended temporarily. And that is so much more effective than having just a fine, because a fine is taken as just the cost of doing business. And so having the actual possibility of not being able to sell tobacco for a period of time, that really ensures that, or really puts the pressure on to ensure that the retailers are making sure that all of their clerks are checking ID carefully. And that really makes a difference. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you for that input.
Next up, we have, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Lucian. I've unmuted you. You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, just speak up a little bit, please.
It's Lucianne, but you can call me Lucy. Good evening, Mayor Brownrigg, Vice Mayor Colson, Council Members Beach, Ortiz, and Stevenson. My name is Lucy Latu, and I am your neighbor, meaning I am a resident of the city of San Mateo. I have lived in San Mateo for almost 30 years, and I'm a Bearcat. Go Bearcats. I'm here this evening not to talk about high schools and which one is better, Bearcats, than the other. I'm here this evening to add to the discussion of potential interest in tobacco retailer permit program. Your Burlingame staff is recommending that you, the City Council, provide direction on the question, should the city pursue the adoption of a tobacco retailer permit program? I am here to say yes. The city should pursue the adoption of a tobacco retailer permit program like we did in San Mateo last month by adopting the San Mateo County's new tobacco retail ordinance that offers a city-county partnership and full implementation of policies that restrict all flavored tobacco products, which comes at no cost to the city of Burlingame and will provide teeth to your current policy. A few years ago, Burlingame took a strong stance to protect our youth and public health by prohibiting the sale of all flavored tobacco products, including flavored hookah. Please do not weaken your existing policy with exemptions. We need policies that support the health of all our communities today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Are there any other comments, Madam City Clerk?
We have emails, but they're kind of, so I will read them at the end.
Okay, let's hold those. So then I'm going to close this part of the public hearing. I will reopen it. Colleagues, the question on the table is whether we'd like to have staff bring us back the model permit program for consideration and adoption, potentially for adoption. Are there any comments or questions on that?
Mr. Mayor, one of the speakers had a comment that I would love to have clarified. If we adopt the county ordinance, are we allowed to have an exemption for hookah if we so choose?
Mayor Ortiz, if you'd like to open up the public hearing, it looks like the county representative can.
Up to
Sure. Right. If we can, why don't we have an expert answer to that?
If you adopt the county ordinance, adopt it as is or verbatim, and you cannot make any exemptions, including hookah. No exemptions.
The county does not permit hookah.
Does not make exemptions for hookah.
Okay, I suspect by not making an exemption, you would mean that a hookah lounge would be subject to investigation as to whether it was selling inappropriately and could potentially lose its permit if it were.
That is correct.
So it doesn't ban hookah, it just holds it to the same regulatory regime as any tobacco retailer.
Yeah, should Burlingame consider adopting the county ordinance, you must adopt it
Okay,
as is.
I think that's the answer,
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, thanks for your clarification.
Madam Vice Mayor.
Before you head down, so there is a clarification between, so that would be flavored. It's obviously hookah and the sachet's flavored. So it's that, all right, great.
Yeah, state law prohibits that.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry, the county law prohibits flavored tobacco?
Yes.
So the county law prohibits flavored tobacco. So the question we have is, so if you adopt the county ordinance, does that mean hookah is not allowed, or is it?
If it's a flavored tobacco product, it would be banned.
So the only thing hookah lounge could sell would be a non-flavored tobacco.
Yes, Mr. Stevenson.
Another clarifying question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is the ordinance for new applicants only, or is it retroactive to existing businesses?
It's for new applicants, or if an establishment's permit somehow is allowed to lapse, and then they may have to apply as if they're a new applicant, then it would apply. But it is for new applications.
So I still need I'm going back to the other question. So if it's a hookah lounge, you're saying it cannot sell flavored hookah, it can only sell non-flavored.
It cannot sell flavored tobacco products.
And
yes, and
sorry,
hookahs.
another clarification then. So does the county ordinance, I always imagine the county ordinance was for retail. In other words, you're carrying it away with you. What about on-site consumption? Does the county ordinance speak to that? like a smoker's lounge?
That would be a different, it's not a retailer ordinance. This is just related to the retail ordinance. How it applies to places of employment would be different. And there is a separate state law that prohibits smoking in places of employment.
I don't want to get too bogged down. Let me in fact ask you, so I think one isn't supposed to go back and forth on public comment. And since we're going to definitely consider this again, I would ask you to just whatever additional information you'd like to make available, be part of the staff report, because we're not adopting this tonight anyway. This was a kind of point of clarification. I think it's a little, all right. Okay, very, very quickly, if you would.
Okay. So the county ordinance applies to all tobacco retailers. On-site consumption lounges that sell tobacco are tobacco retailers. So it would apply to everybody in your city. There is not an exemption for hookah. And it basically matches your current full flavored tobacco policy. You already don't allow flavored hookah, and yet you've been allowing it for 2 years. So it would uphold your current policy. It applies to all retailers. All retailers would have a tobacco retail permit through the county, and they would all be subject to a full comprehensive flavored tobacco sales restriction.
Okay, I think, again, this is a point where taken in too much detail. So we'll need to see it in a report and bring this back and consider it in its fulsomeness, and we'll probably be informed by the later conversation on hookah in general.
And just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, we will do that. We will ensure that we do a full.
Thank you.
This.
Okay. There was certainly compelling testimony, hookah to one side, about the benefit of adopting the county's approach. So, all right, that takes us then into the sort of.
You don't want any further comment on?
Oh, no, please.
I fully support the county's enforcement. We need enforcement. We don't have the capacity. It's reasonable and it keeps it out of kids. I think it's a really important ordinance to get behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Beach. So this will be brought back by staff so that we can focus on this in depth and make a decision.
Mr. Mayor.
The other three, yes.
So do you want to finish doing comments on this portion, or do you want to wait to?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I agree with Councilmember Beach. But I do think that we need to get through the hookah part of it. And if we do find that we want to make an exemption for hookah, obviously, then that makes this we need to make an important clarification there that we can do that. But in general, I do agree with Councilmember Beach.
Thank you. Any other comments on this part?
Question.
Vice Mayor Colson.
So should we decide not to adopt the county ordinance, but wanted to adopt our own permitting ordinance where we could maintain control, we'd be able to do that, but we just simply wouldn't have the county enforcement.
We would certainly be able to put in our own program. We would just be burdened with all the costs.
We would be doing our own enforcement. Okay.
So once again, appreciate the input. We will bring this back and tear into it. But that is disposed with that part of the program. So now we have 3 items, which is what does the outdoor smoking ban on Broadway mean? Should it be extrapolated also to Burlingame Avenue? And then what about hookah and flavored tobacco? So I think in the interest again of trying not to get too muddied, let's focus on Broadway and hookah and leave Burlingame Avenue and the question about whether it should be extended. Actually, strike that. We'll just have public comment on everything. Can I have a quick show of hands as to who would like to comment? So roughly half, like most people. So I'm going to set the timer at 2 minutes. I'd ask you to try to stay within that limit, partly just so that everybody has a chance to talk while everyone still has energy. Does that sound right?
Yes.
So with that, I know I have a bunch of white, well, actually, no, we've had the staff report. So I'll open it up for public comment. There are a lot of white slips. I'm not going to call out names. I'd ask you to just come on up and share your comments. So
Questions?
did we not? I beg your pardon. Actually, the vice mayor raises a good point. I wanted us to focus on the permit program. If I could ask Mr. Spansale to come back up if there are questions from the council for you on the other 3 items before we go to public comment. So could you rejoin us? So thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. So the question is, or the point to the council is, are there questions you'd like to ask of staff to clarify any of those other three items? Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious, do we have any numbers on enforcement or what? Because I mean, I hear some of the speakers just saying we haven't enforced it at all. So I'm curious.
I can ask our police chief if he's shaking his head no. So it sounds like we don't have any numbers on enforcement. I know for hookah, we've been delaying a little bit of enforcement to make sure that we could have this conversation here today before we really ramped up any enforcement measures.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
But in terms of actual sales of flavored tobacco, it looks like we have no.
Thank you.
May I clarify, does that mean that we're not checking or doing anything, or it just means we've not discovered anyone? Sorry.
I'm going to let the police chief.
And I guess I would extend that to, have we cited anyone for tobacco use, smoking on the street?
So we do enforcement and we do take complaints. And I know we have in the past, we have a group of officers that go out and do compliance checks. We check on complaints. I just don't have those numbers on me tonight. I wasn't prepared to get those numbers, but I can get them, and we do enforcement. How much, I don't know. I'll have to check.
Okay, well, I might suggest we start with the young woman, with the woman on the side who has purchased, and find out where she purchased, and maybe do a quick stop by that store.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any other questions with respect to the first three items on the agenda?
I have one.
Yes, Vice Mayor Colson.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Spansale. I just want to understand, when I'm looking at this map of Broadway that we've delineated, and sorry, Director Gardner as well. So I just want to make it clear, because there was some, well, first of all, I do also want to say that I have had ex parte communications with many of these people. They've called me, we've talked, businesses, residents, and interested parties, including advocacy. So just to make sure everyone's well aware of that. And so I think there was some confusion around the Broadway, the mapping of the current Broadway district. So for example, Behen's has a smoking area in their back courtyard. So the current in other words, and they do it because they don't want patrons smoking on the front sidewalk in the public area. And obviously they can't smoke in the bar. So they've created a sort of smoking area out in the back. But I guess what I'm learning now is that under this current ordinance or temporary ordinance we have, that would be illegal.
I can take that. Yes, that is currently illegal because it's all unenclosed spaces within that map area. That's something that we could certainly write if the council were to direct all front facing.
So we could say, for example, would be front facing on Broadway and then front facing just down to the boundaries of the district.
That's something we could certainly,
Okay.
We can also say that private property, unenclosed spaces are not a part of this.
Okay.
So there's a couple different ways to do it if the council gives us direction to.
Okay.
For those.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember
So
Steve.
just a follow-up question. Since it's unenclosed patio space, does it fall, is it in violation of the state regulation in the labor code?
It is not. It's only in violation of our pilot program.
Any other questions for City Attorney? Thank you very much. It was a good report. So I am going to open it up to public comment, after which the council will then review and digest all of your remarks. And we'll try to give staff some direction on these three interrelated questions. To the extent that anybody wants to address the Broadway smoking ban, I do think an important element is this question about the backyard space. So when you either support the Broadway smoking ban or you have reservations, if you could address, particularly if you mean in front of the store on the street, or you're also including the backyard open space, because that's one of the key issues here. So with that, I'm going to open up and invite you to come up and speak. If you could tell us who you are, that'd be great.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of Burlingame City Council. My name is Majid Samar. I'm an attorney, and I represent the owner of the Society Eatery and Lounge which is located on Broadway Street, 1130 Broadway Street. I'm just here to urge the city of Burlingame to honor the permit that my client has. He purchased the business in December of 2022, and he's been operating as a hookah lounge in Burlingame. He has obligations in terms of his lease, and also he has 10 employees that currently working there. If the city were to enact a new ordinance, I'm just asking that the city allows my client to continue to operate his business, because he purchased the business thinking that he has a legal operation. The city of Foster City and also Redwood City went through similar situations, and at the end, they allowed the existing business to continue. Of course, my client will adhere to any restrictions, any new conditions that the city deems appropriate. But because of his reliance on the existing law, I would ask that the city of Burlingame, through this honorable committee, to allow him to continue to operate his business. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Who else would like to join us? Please just step up. Don't make me call on you.
Hello, City Council. My name is Ali Cengiz. I'm here on behalf of Society Management too. I provide you our PowerPoint slides on your tables. I want to briefly explain it like in short time. Hookah has a 500 years traditional stuff, and hookah is a community building tool. Cultural gathering and cultural expressions has been part of the centuries. Indian, Arabs, Persians, Armenians, Israelis, North African, Russian, Ukrainian, and Turkish. People gather around the hookah and engage in conversation and social interactions. And it's not like the cigarettes or like the electronic cigarettes or vapes, because it's difficult to conceal in your pocket. And minors cannot easily assemble it. It takes 15 minutes to prepare, and it will be not easily to hold it at your home or keeping like the hiding, or you can take it to school. So I understand the concerns of the communities on that part. And it's not easy to accessible like the vape or cigarettes, even you're underage or something. On that case, I would like to give the hookah lounges give the chance to control the ID and the checking the IDs and using the official products instead of going through the black markets. If you allow the launches like on these parts is the operating continuously, it will be allow the people not go to the black market products or online sales who cannot control the age. And it will be economical effects because of the people are coming from all around the Burlingame, from Sacramento, Tracy, Modesto, not for hookah. They're coming sightseeing and they're eating for other businesses. They're eating other restaurants and like make shoppings. And after then they will come to smoke hookah. And as our lawyer mentioned it, there is some exceptions on the same county, San Mateo County in Redwood City and Foster City for the same thing like the hookah kind as an exception. Societies, I want to mention that fully support of the complete ban on the smoking like the public area. I will finish immediately. And society shares ownership with other Burlingame restaurants, Mykonos and Mediterranean Kitchen that you know, and we are the local business owners, chamber members, and dedicated the business community members at the same time. Society's location is like a really good, it will not bother our close neighbors and affected by hookah. If nobody will affected by hookah, and we can serve our back patio, open patio, and who is over 21.
Can you wrap it up?
Hookah is being offered by pre-owners for many years. It's not the new business. We didn't get the the business license new, and it was serving like many years. And society has a proper state license for selling the tobacco. I have the copy here if you want to check it. And we are offering the hookah to customers. The state's
Sir, the system only works.
Okay.
Stick to the 2 minutes.
Okay, so I can finish right now. Thank you for respect.
Thank you very much. Yes, please. Anybody else who has a comment, please just.
Hello, my city council. My name is Gerard Mitchell. I own Behan's Irish Pub. We've been there since 1985. 13 years ago, we came to the city council to build the backyard for my patrons. When I heard about the proposal going on Broadway, I'm all for it. I think the street, the front of the stores, definitely. But without this backyard, I don't know if I can survive. It's very important to me and my family. So I wish I could sit here and talk to you more about it, but I'm just too nervous. So I just wish you guys would feel for me and my family.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
Hi, thank you. I'm Trisha Barr again. So for those who say that they want tobacco and hookah for cultural purposes, there are non-flavored tobacco that one can smoke for hookah. And there's also something called steam stones if they want to offer the hookah experience without tobacco. So there are alternatives. And society obviously has a extensive menu already and can provide food and that could be their business. When the owner talks about the flavors, the flavors that come from different countries, it doesn't include flavors like lemon mint, spice chai, white gummy, blue mist, grape mint, strawberry, twice ice, double apple. These are all flavors I'm reading off of society's menu. Butterfly, gossip, stunning, and these have longer definitions of all the different flavors that they combine. Many Middle Eastern countries have banned the sale of hookah, and especially when COVID started, and then they've continued they've continued that ban. And one of my friends who is from Iran said that because the number of, and I've looked this up in the World Health Organization, the increase in the number of cancer incidents among youth between the ages of 18 and 24, including lung, head and neck, and especially esophageal cancers. Because of this, the sale of flavored tobacco has been banned in the entire country of Iran since 2000. So yes, there are cultural historical reasons, but it doesn't mean that we need to continue. And we certainly don't need the bright lights and green glowing colors that are allowed. That attracts youth and it's not cultural.
Thank you very much.
Blythe Young, American Heart Association. And I mentioned earlier, for the last 2 years, you've had a comprehensive flavored tobacco policy in Burlingame. I imagine there's a reason you took that stance when you did. The Heart Association partnered with the state to help get the state bill passed. We had to take some exemptions to cover the majority of the state. However, I'm still working locally, city by city, to get comprehensive flavored tobacco policies passed that include hookah and premium cigars. For the last 2 years, you've had a business that has knowingly violated your ordinance locally and violated state law by serving food in an enclosed space with hookah that violates the Clean Indoor Act that your city earlier. They also continue to serve flavors and still do today, despite you having a law on the books for 2 years that had prohibited that. So it'd be one thing if you were talking about bringing it back, but it never went away. I also want to point out that one of the businesses that you're considering exempting is here in your lobby tonight serving refreshments. That's the first time I've ever seen that. It makes me wonder what the cost of your vote is. in terms of allowing a business who is being considered with what I consider a conflict of interest as an exemption to be publicly in your lobby with a sign serving food and beverages to the rest of the folks here tonight. So I ask you to think about why you originally adopted your policy. I ask you to stay strong, and I ask you to adopt the county match that would uphold your original intent and provide the enforcement that is clearly needed in the city of Burlingame. Thank you.
Thank you.
Edith Kabusly again with San Mateo County Health. I want to be clear that we really want to protect children from the hazards of tobacco. A survey of California youth showed that about 46% of them believe the hookah is safer than regular cigarettes. And there's also data from the state of California that shows that 40% of hookah users are Latinos. So the people who are using hookah products are also part of those communities that are most heavily impacted by tobacco-related illnesses. And if we want to protect them, and if we want to uphold health equity, we want to be able to make sure that we don't have flavored products that are available to them. The truth also, research shows, is that hookah users spend more time using hookah than they would using a regular cigarette. And there's research that shows that they're exposed to 1.7 times more nicotine than they would be if they were smoking cigarettes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I wanted to begin to mention that I'm from Germany, and but I'm from I have a Middle Eastern background, and in Germany it's a very big minority. So there's plenty of hookah places in Germany. So when I moved here, I was shocked to see that there were barely any hookah bars in Burlingame. And so I wanted to use my voice as a resident too. And I just want to emphasize the cultural meaning of hookah and that it has passed on to so many generations. And it was mentioned that the hookah flavors and the colors, or as the name the lady just mentioned, that they're not part of the culture, but they are. I just wanted to point that out. And we could also give the Oktoberfest as an example where plenty of alcohol is being used, but unfortunately, yes, there are medical issues about alcohol, but it is part of that culture. And so is the hookah. So yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Alina Mek. I live in Burlingame. I also work in Burlingame, so I'm local, but I came from the Eastern European culture. And as you may know, most all post-USSR countries, as Russia, Ukraine, and other countries, they all accept hookahs. By the way, it's very common, and it's like a part of the culture already. And even right now in Ukraine, even during war, there are no bans of hookah lounges. They're still widely open, right? And I'm here to support Society Lounge, but get me right, I do not support substances and vapes, and cigarettes that people are selling to minors. Of course not. I'm a mother myself. I have a son. But if you're 21 year old, and over 21 year old, you are allowed to go to any place, hookah place, and smoke hookah if your age allow you, right? So I think you just need to be smart and just thoughtful about it. So I don't want you to ban Society Lounge. We all respect and love this place and our culture, people of our culture. We just think it's a nice place, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Are there any other comments?
Good evening. I definitely would like to, I'm a resident of San Mateo, and definitely would like to support Society Club because I was born in Central Asia. I'm living here like 30 years, and basically this is definitely our culture. And we all working hard, and basically this is amazing place, guys. Like if you've never been there, stop by there. It's amazing, clean, beautiful, nice design and beautiful bar where we can get together and where we can sit and talk, and like this is amazing place. And like you can imagine, like for example in Central Asia, and I was born in Kyrgyzstan, it's like everywhere hookah. It's like you can get like hookah like any clubs, any bar, and everywhere. It's definitely culture.
Thank you very much. And just before anybody else comes up, we will keep it open, but maybe we'll switch for a second, Madam City Clerk, to online commentary and knock some of them out.
Sure. I'm going to unmute Lynn Israeli, if you'd like to talk.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. As many of you are probably already aware, I'm a physician and have spent many years in the past treating people who have had life-threatening diseases and some of the most pervasive types of cancers and lung disease, as well as heart disease and stroke that can come from tobacco use. So granted, I have probably a slightly different perspective than those who are there to support hookah tonight. I would ask that we do not make an exception for hookah, especially flavored tobacco. We have a ban against flavored tobacco for the very reasons that tobacco should not be made fun for youth, even young people in their 20s who are legally allowed to smoke, and there's no doubt about it that hookah is tobacco. It's still tobacco, and it has many of the same negative health effects that cigarette smoke does. So it is not necessarily a safe alternative. And I personally don't think we should be encouraging society to begin smoking hookah or continue smoking hookah, especially with flavored tobacco. I think we should be strong on that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roulette, for your service. Who else? Do we have anyone else online?
Yes, I'm going to read an email so that you don't get sick of hearing my voice as well. This one comes from John Kavradian. He says, in April of this year, the city of Burlingame passed a temporary ban on smoking for the Broadway business district. I'm very grateful to the members of the council for implementing this policy. I have received tremendous support from the Broadway business owners and also the Burlingame community. Over the past several months, hundreds of community members have called and dropped by my place of business to show their support in regard to the new policy. I believe the no smoking ban ordinance has been very effective. On an average day, I used to clean on the 1200 block south side of Broadway 80 to 90 cigarette butts a day. Now I clean less than 6 per day. We are not at 100% implementation yet because the city has not posted no smoking signs on any city poles. I was told that the city would not post signs until it became a permanent no smoking ban. A small number of businesses have paper signs that the city produced. Some businesses did not post signs because the public would think it is the business policy. I'm in full support of having the Broadway Business District as a permanent no smoking district. Also, I would recommend the Burlingame City Council not make any exceptions to the flavored tobacco laws that are in place in Burlingame. Communities throughout California are banning flavored tobacco, and we need to move forward by protecting our community and not backwards. 1 hour of hookah equals 100 cigarettes. We need to protect employees and patrons from secondhand smoke, protect nearby neighbors, also prevent carbon monoxide poisoning from the charcoal used for hookah. Again, please support a permanent ban on smoking and also do not make any exceptions to the flavored tobacco ordinance to allow hookah in Burlingame. Our next comment comes from Molly St. Clair. I'll go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead.
Hello, council members. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. My name is Molly St. Clair, and I have been a resident of Burlingame for the past 10 years. I currently work as a director for the American Heart Association, and tonight I'm speaking as both a resident and a concerned parent in Burlingame, and also an advocate for the health and well-being of all of our children locally. A few years ago, Burlingame took a strong stance to protect our youth and public health by prohibiting the sale of all flavored tobacco products, including the sale of hookah. I am asking today that we not move backwards and weaken our existing policy. It sounds strange as a resident here to even have to say these words out loud. On the peninsula, Burlingame is a known leader and advocate for the well-being of our youth. There may be some misunderstanding as to what hookah is. Hookah does contain nicotine, and it is, like all nicotine products, very addictive. I am confused as to why we are supporting a restaurant that is attached to a hookah lounge. Society is knowingly in violation of multiple state and local laws, as we have just heard. So my question to the council members is, why are we even considering this business for an exemption? I, with my husband, tried to dine in the restaurant. This was just a month ago. We sat down and quickly realized that the rooms are connected with no real door. We could see directly into the hookah lounge from the dining area. The smell of hookah was very strong. I would argue that the air quality is not safe for anyone. Patrons need to be made aware that they are being exposed to secondhand smoke at the very least. But I beg that all council members do not consider walking back your earlier decision and making an exemption for hookah. Hookah is with no doubt a flavored tobacco. I strongly believe we owe this community more and we owe our kids more. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
Our next comment comes from Linda Ryan. She writes in, she says, "Thank you, council, for all you do for the city. As a regular walker and shopper on Broadway, I ask that you please keep all smoking, I'm beeping myself. All smoking ban on Broadway. Please say no to hookah, which smells very strong and toxic and a known carcinogen. With increased wildfire smoke, please keep our local shopping area as clean as possible. There are plenty of places people can smoke on private property. Please keep Burlingame's air clean." And then we have a comment online from Linda Holden. So Linda, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Linda Holden. I have lived in Burlingame for 37 years, and I am a lead legislative ambassador for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. I would like to speak about some of the tobacco issues. The first one is regarding the no smoking pilot program on Broadway. Please add Burlingame Avenue and make it permanent. These are the two major retail pedestrian streets in Burlingame. Secondly, you have taken a strong stance on flavored tobacco products, including hookah. The sale of flavored tobacco is currently prohibited in Burlingame. Please do not backtrack and make exceptions. Instead, take this opportunity to adopt San Mateo County's new retail ordinance for city and county partnership of the policies. The city of San Mateo adopted the county ordinance, and I would like to see Burlingame do the same. Since Burlingame has had a hard time enforcing the regulations right now. Regarding the hookah lounges, we all know tobacco is addictive. There are alternatives, herbal and non-tobacco products to use. In closing, this is 2023. We know the damage tobacco can do. Please work with the county to make this a countywide ordinance. We need to do better for our youth and residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next comment comes from Francesca. She says, "Personally, I would love it if there was no smoking allowed for people walking on Burlingame Ave. But at the same time, I do not have a problem if there is a smoking lounge. Although the smoke must not interfere with people passing by or any other businesses, secondhand smoke is real and we do not need to be subjected to this. My questions would be, if a smoking lounge is approved by the city, who is responsible to make sure the ventilation of the business keeps the smoke away from the public? Is it the city or the landlord's responsibility? Are there laws to protect us from the smoke interfering with our business? How would this be monitored? Thank you for your time." And our next comment comes from Brian. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead.
Brian Davis again. Society has been violating the local ordinance against the sale of all flavored tobacco products for 2 years. Now they want you to ignore that and allow them to continue to violate the law, using the excuse that the state exempts businesses like theirs. Now I understand that they're offering refreshments in the lobby. Why is this being allowed? No hookah lounges in California cities with flavored hookah restrictions have gone out of business. Enforcing your law will not close businesses. There is a reason why 90 jurisdictions in California chose to stop the sale of all flavored tobacco, including hookah. Research shows that hookah is a gateway product for underage youth to other tobacco products and cannabis. One study showed that 12 to 17-year-olds who had ever used hookah were almost 2 times as likely to smoke a year later. Another study showed 9th graders who used hookah were 3.5 times as likely to try and 4 times more likely to currently smoke cannabis by 12th grade. Actual hookah flavors like white gummy bear and safari melon dew are clearly aimed at children. And just because businesses say they won't let youth under 21 in doesn't mean that they will. Underage youth access to hookah lounges happens frequently in other cities. Can a business in Burlingame that has been selling hookah illegally for 2 years, flavored hookah, be trusted to keep kids away now? A better idea is to enforce your existing law by stopping this business from selling flavored tobacco and to adopt the county's tobacco retail license to protect Burlingame's youth. Also, over 50 Bay Area jurisdictions, including San Jose, don't allow smoking on bar patios, backyards included, to protect the health of workers and patrons. Research shows that smoke-free bar patios do not harm and often help those businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next email comes from Monica. She says, as a parent who fought with vigor to ban all flavored tobacco, it concerns me that these products continue to plague. I'm going to beat myself. To plague our community, and retail stores are not following the law. A few years ago, Burlingame took a strong stance to protect our youth and public health by prohibiting the sale of all flavored tobacco products, including flavored hookah. Please do not weaken your existing policy with exemptions. Instead, take the opportunity to adopt San Mateo County's new tobacco retail ordinance that offers a city/county partnership and full implementation of policies that restrict all flavored tobacco products. This enforcement/implementation comes at no cost to the city and will provide teeth to your current policy. Your neighbor San Mateo just adopted the county match this month. We need policies that support the health of our communities. Businesses and jurisdictions with full flavors policies have not seen hookah lounges close. There are alternative products without nicotine and tobacco. And our last hand up is from Tina. So Tina, go ahead and unmute yourself. Tina?
Hello, my name is Tina and I work on Burlingame Avenue. And I would like to extend the ban on smoking to Burlingame Avenue. As I'm aware, I think I'm the only business on the avenue that does not have a door or a storefront. We are an open air business. And recently a change of hands at our neighbor has gone from a smoke shop to a cigar lounge with seating of over 15 people. And now they have requested to have a liquor license, which now will turn it into a bar. It's unregulated as far as I know. And I would like to support the ban on smoking on Burlingame Avenue and not extend any exemptions to any existing businesses. As when their store door is open, I am exposed to secondhand smoke on a daily basis. And I'd like to know if there,
What kind of filters?
what kind of filters and other
Should have.
filtration systems are needed at this type of business. So my name is Tina, and I would like to extend the ban on smoking on Burlingame Avenue and in existing smoke lounges, which are now lounges, not smoke shops, and potentially bars. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
No more hands raised or emails.
Okay, so then back to our public. Please come and join us.
Good evening. I'm a business owner in Burlingame for over 25 years and a resident for 10 years and a mother of 2 daughters that enjoy smoking hookah occasionally, and I'm okay with it as long as it's not something that's happening all the time. I've heard a lot of comments on hookah and against hookah. Hookah has no smell. I like to make a correction. It's not like, unlike cigarettes. You cannot buy a hookah and walk with it on the street. It's localized in a backyard or a lounge. And I think with the proper ventilation, I'm okay with it. I support the exception, making an exception to the ban. I feel it's harmless to the people next to you. It makes you relax if after a long day. And like many people mentioned, it brings a lot of people from different cities to come enjoy Burlingame and see all the beautiful things we've done and shop and eat. And at the end of the night, because hookah is not operated, people don't want it in the middle of the day. Most likely it's after 5. I just feel like alcohol. We don't talk about alcohol. Alcohol is harmless. We don't see the side effect of alcohol. It's a personal choice. I feel if somebody feels like having a hookah, they can have a hookah. And it's not something someone wants it every single night. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
Hello, my name is Cecilia. I'm a medical researcher. And although I do support the non-smoking regulation that you guys are trying to implement in the city, I do believe that smoking is very harmful as a medical researcher. However, I feel like the same as alcohol, alcohol is very harmful to your liver. I mean, I heard people talking about like minorities consuming hookah, or somebody mentioned that Latinos consume hookah. Yeah, they also consume alcohol. And I think that as long as something is regulated, you're preventing people from doing something illegal. So like the hookah lounge, I mean, I heard a lot of comments about the hookah lounge. If it's regulated and you're only allowing people that are 21 and over, I don't see the problem with it. We're adults and we can make decisions about our health, just like you do with alcohol. There are obviously problems with smoking and lung cancer and all that, but I think people are aware of that also when they are drinking alcohol. Another thing that was mentioned was that countries in the Middle East prohibited hookah during COVID. The reason for that is mainly because of the transmission of COVID through the hookah pipe. That was the main reason. I mean, I was in Turkey through the pandemic. The reason why they stopped serving hookah in the hookah lounges was because of the transmission of COVID through the pipe, not because of the effects that it has on the lungs. Even though that is accurate, it has an effect on your lungs, but that's not the reason why they stopped it. That's it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for being here this evening. Are there other comments from the audience?
Hello, City Hall Councilor and all the staff. My name is Aurelia Kazako, and I'm an owner of the business in Burlingame, and also I'm a resident. So, and as an owner of a beauty business in here, I'd like to express my support for the hardworking individuals who invest considerable effort, time, and resources to enhance and make our city more beautiful and more attractive. So first of all, society has become a great feature in Burlingame, adding a unique and positive atmosphere to the whole city. Both my friends, family, and clients from Peninsula really like and value a pleasant, beautiful, and secure destination of the society. Our city is full of eateries, boutiques, small shops, beauty salons, and society, something that introduces another gathering spot for people to socialize, have fun, and appreciate a new and delightful location where they can also enjoy organic product, such as hookah, if they choose. So it's their own choice. We're all good. We're all tired by the time of COVID that cages to our homes. So people wants to go out, socialize, make new friends and new people, and keep with their tradition, because hookah is somebody's tradition and we have to value this. And we have a right to choose. Also, secondary, it's important to note that hookah, the best of my knowledge, is a legal product in California, so making society is a legitimate establishment. My office, located on Burlingame Avenue, next to the little alley, which takes to the backside parking lot. And while we're here arguing about legal indoor place where people smoke legal tobacco under supervision by professional staff, this little alley is clouded with smoke of marijuana by teenagers and creepy people. So this is what we have to consider of making our place safe, Burlingame safe. So these guys are making place indoor safe place for people who have a right and who are legal to smoke. And it's nothing that is make them high, or it's relaxing, and it's also, we have to be respectful to someone's tradition. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being here.
Good evening. I would love to mention a couple things regarding the hookah. I'm the part of the society management. So I heard that some comments goes through, first one was the eating. So eating area will be separated with the patio areas. We do have a separate patio, which is open with the three of the walls are open. And entrance has an exterior door, which is always keep it closed. When the customers are passing, we just open it and then they go through the patio and they just passing through the dining area. So in the dining area, we do have the 3 different ventilations just to protect from the smoking coming from the patio, even though the doors are closed. We do have the ventilations, it's open, business hours, all the business hours goes through. And the other things I would love to tell you, like the hookah. Hookah is, yes, it's harmless, it's dangerous, but same thing, the alcohol. With the hookah, we do have the ID checks, we do have the digital ID checks, electronics. We check every single person's ID, and also we check it up the persons, whoever comes up, we never allow them to the patio. And concerns, yes, hookah is dangerous, but hookah is also cultural things. We just keep it as safe as possible to go through this time. And last things, the business wise, they're telling me that it doesn't go through it doesn't gonna close it up the business. That's not true. Our 95% of the sales, it goes from the hookah. And the business was open for 17 years, back in Sahara time, Beirut time, and now is the society time. I understand that we should do our due diligence to check it up everything, but we make that mistake, but business was there 17 years. So we're just telling that, help us out to make it up the better place. Thank you.
Much. Could I ask you a quick question if you're
Please.
hookah, if you're with Society Management? And that is one of the, I don't know if it's a distinction or not, but this question of flavored tobacco.
Mhm.
Can a hookah lounge survive if it were just selling tobacco?
That's just,
Without the flavors?
honestly, in America, none of my knowledge, there is an unflavored tobacco. There is a nicotine-free tobacco. It's been started for the last year or so. They started, but I haven't seen any hookah lounges is going through with it. But unflavored tobacco, unflavored hookah tobacco, I never heard it.
Well, let's just call it regular tobacco, like cigarette.
No, it's not the same thing. If you have the regular tobacco in that shisha pipe, it's harm. They cannot smoke.
Somehow I'm not getting my question across.
Yeah.
To make something taste like blueberries or sunshine requires you to add flavorings.
Correct.
And so can a hookah lounge exist without flavoring its tobacco?
No.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other members who would like to participate? Okay. Thank you very much for that. This is a conversation tonight. There's not an action item. Obviously, a controversial issue, no mystery there if you've listened to the testimony. I think there are, as we discuss this tonight amongst the council, a couple of different questions to tease out. One is the more general question of whether we meant to, when we adopted a ban on public smoking on Broadway, whether we meant to include backyard terraces. And that's not a hookah question. That's just a general question. The state of California, as I read the rules, does not prohibit smoking if you're outside. You want to correct me on that?
No, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. And so I think one question before us this evening is, did we mean to affect B-hands as well as a potential hookah lounge? That's one. Two, obviously the flavored tobacco, and then the hookah, the more specific hookah lounge. I think let's hold off on the Burlingame Avenue because I think we had less testimony on that, and frankly, we'll be driven a bit by the conversation about Broadway. So with that as a preview, who'd like to dive in?
Yeah, I'll start, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind.
Please.
So, okay, so when I think about why we did what we did, and I keep thinking, I saw the smoking on the street on Broadway as a nuisance, and you were forcing people to smell the smoke, and there was a secondhand smoking. I was not, in my mind, it was not about what happened in private places behind and patios. So to me, if we were going to go ahead with this, I would just do the front of the stores on the street, like the Vice Mayor was kind of referring to earlier. As far as the flavor, again, once my intent was when kids would go to the store to buy these flavored tobaccos that they were getting hooked on, I wanted to put a stop to that. When I think of the hookah lounge where people are controlled as far as their IDs are checked when they go to do that, that's not what I was intending. So for me to make an exception for the hookah, that doesn't bother me too much. And that's it. That's pretty much it.
That's good. Good start. Thank you. Councilmember Beach.
No, thank you. I appreciate the public sticking around and caring so much about this, and appreciate the effort that staff did to put this together and do the surveys. Really important discussion. And I do appreciate the argument about the tradition behind hookah. I've probably spent about 3 years of my life living abroad in various countries, Middle Eastern countries, Asia, Europe, cultures that have smoking traditions. I have a sense of that, and I can appreciate that. But here's how I'm thinking about this. Our presentation started with the whole reason we can even regulate this is because of the police power. And it's because of public health. It's the issue is not what we really do to ourselves, whether you choose to drink alcohol or smoke. It's really the impact of public health on other people around you. So the issue is a lot of the side stream issue of smoking. And it sure seems that one of the reasons we've regulated is we thought about doing it in Broadway, and we're considering it doing in Burlingame Avenue, is because it's dense areas where people are put together that can't necessarily control what other people are doing. So the health of that. It's why the city before Vice Mayor Coulson and I came on board actually banned smoking in multi-unit residential buildings, because people were smoking on their balconies and it was affecting other neighbors and going in through their windows, and it was a nuisance, and it made people's lives better to say, let's not do that in a dense area, just trying to all live in harmony. So when it comes to hookah, I appreciate the culture aspect, but it is smoking, it's addictive, it has side stream issues. Believe me, I got an earful from people about the smell, the impact of hookah in the area. We have heard complaints about that, but it's the side stream health issue too. I'm surprised by and large, the public seems very supportive in the survey, more than I thought they would be, of smoking bans, of what we're doing on Broadway. So I think all in all things considered, I support maintaining our flavored tobacco ban, not have an exception for hookah, to just try to keep people safe in close environments, and to adopt the county's tobacco retailer permit. That's where I come down on this.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach. Councilmember Stevenson,
I don't smoke. I've never smoked. In part, that was a personal choice, but in part it was health conscious and not wanting to do that because I had grandparents that smoked, and cancer in the family and things like that. So I do come at this from a public health, and I think that motivated most of our ordinance. Our thinking is to making sure we're protecting people where their choice and their is not violated by somebody else's. I'm very adamant about children's access. I think that's an issue with retail. I think that's an issue in other establishments. So I definitely think that we need to have some level of enforcement, and much stronger than just fines along the board, whether we do it as a county or whether we do it as a city. But I also respect the culture. I lived overseas for a great period of time. And not every culture is formed by how we grew up here in the US or even locally in Burlingame. So I respect that. I think the challenge is if we can figure out a way to enforce and prevent the youth access, and at the same time allow for free choice in spots where people of age can make a conscious decision, whether it's an outdoor terrace or whether it's a lounge. I would like to look into that a little bit more, but I think that's kind of where I fall out.
Thank you for that. I actually, Councilmember Beach, just to ask you in your comments, I think the simplest way to put it is, what about behans? So people smoking cigarettes outside a bar.
Or a restaurant or society having a back patio.
Yeah,
Right? We're
right.
talking about.
Yeah.
This one I'm torn on. Because I do, like, you saw my thought process on this, right? The reason we do this is because we're in a dense area where people are impacted by what other people are doing. If you're having a couple of beers, it's not impacting the neighbor above, unless you're totally misbehaving, right? And acting out. Your behavior, the smoke is not impacting your balcony, your shower, your windows, your baby trying to sleep, or your office next door. I'd like to hear what colleagues have to say about that, but I am concerned about that. It's kind of like just living in a dense environment for multi-unit residential. Are we having complaints in the existing smoking areas around behans or other? Maybe it's not a problem if we're not having complaints. Maybe we should really watch it and see what happens if we continue the ban in the front facing.
Right.
And as that word gets out, if people suddenly go, wait a second, I'm being impacted and I live and work around these areas where it's allowed in the back patios, and that's really bothering me, then maybe we need to have another community conversation about that, but maybe take it in steps. But I do think we need to think about that really carefully, because it's about people, other people's health and how it's in. So I guess I'm a little bit, I want to hear what other colleagues are saying, but that's my thought process.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Vice Mayor Coulson?
Certainly. So I would be in favor. I'm okay of the Broadway, continuing the Broadway smoking prohibition. And I do like the idea of we focus on the front retail fronts, and then on the side streets, this sort of take the same area, but it would be the retail fronts and the retail side streets. I think that would accommodate. I actually did reach out to Behans because I understood this would impact them. And it's my understanding, and maybe our city enforcement team can quantify this, but in 14 years, I don't think Behans has had a complaint filed against them for smoking on the back patio. So obviously, if that's the case, and maybe we can verify that, they're doing a good job of keeping it ventilated. And I'm guessing, my preference would not be to force people because unless we put a complete smoking ban on the entire city, if you're not allowed to smoke on the back patio, you're going to walk out the door, go down the street, and you're going to stand and smoke on the sidewalk in front of someone's home.
Yeah.
And then it is going to be wafting into their, baby's room and windows and et cetera. And as far as I know right now, that's not illegal. So I think that we have evidence from Mr. Kavranian that the reduction in cigarette refuse and waste is down. We have happy merchants. We have the general society, that 400 people who responded, supporting that continuation of that ban. And I think if we just clarify that one point, we can start there and see how it goes. So that's my feeling on that. So with regard to the flavored tobacco, at the time I had 2 children that were still young women that were not of 21 years of age. And I was listening to friends of mine. And I think the real issue with the flavored tobacco is keeping it out of the hands of children, anyone under the age of 21. The state exempted hookah in their law with regard to flavored tobacco. They must have had an enormous amount of input for that. I'm fine complying with the state. I think at the time, I didn't even know we had a hookah lounge here. So I think no one may have known that at the time. I'm not sure anyone, I don't even know if it came up. So I think we have one existing 17-year-long business. It would be very difficult, I think they need to comply with all the state laws. I think they're willing to do it, but I'd like to at least leave that open for consideration and further debate and discussion. I'd also be willing to say, we're willing to accommodate the existing business. And I think they have been operating in violation, but I think we have always said enforcement is going to be difficult on these things. Enforcing a smoking ban on Broadway is going to be difficult. I don't want people calling our police department and saying, hey, come on over and arrest this person for smoking on Broadway. And I just don't think it's going to happen. It's a cultural change and shift, and I think we get there through education. So, those are kind of my feelings on the two things. Do you want to take Burlingame Avenue as a secondary? Okay, great.
Let's push off on Burlingame Avenue for just a minute. So for myself, because what we're trying to do is give guidance to staff, I, for one, did not believe that we were regulating backyard areas when we said no public smoking on Broadway. I should have asked, but I imagined that we were talking about the public street, not the backyard. So if this, or when this comes back, we can vote on that point. But I thought we were talking about the public space, which I didn't think was a backyard personally. On flavored tobacco, we were all, I think, on council, and that one's really important to me. I did imagine the flavored tobacco ban was retail. In other words, you're picking up chewing tobacco, you're picking up cigarettes, you're picking up something to go consume somewhere else. I was also unaware that there was a hookah lounge. So on the other hand, there's no hookah lounge without flavors. So I didn't know that either. I guess I am torn on the question of hookah in this context. It does seem like it runs against some of the health protections we've tried to put in place, for example, in multifamily housing. On the other hand, how can you have the position that it's okay to be in the backyard smoking if so I am myself conflicted. And I think the only thing, at least there may be other comment, and we will get to the Burlingame Avenue one in a second. I think what for me is I would ask staff to bring something back, and then I would charge each of us with spending a lot of time over the next 2 weeks to really reflect on this. I, for one, have never been in a hookah lounge. I still haven't been, even though I know this exists, I haven't been. So I will make a point of going. Consumption of tobacco is legal, which is a point that a number of people have made. It is also the case that smoke causes other people health hazards, which is not true of alcohol. So I just think it is a difficult question for me, and I will wrestle with it over the next couple of weeks or 4 weeks if it takes staff a little bit longer to come back. And I'm sorry, I normally am very definitive in how I feel about things, but I just think this is difficult. Yes, Vice Mayor Coulson.
This conversation around alcohol not impacting other people. Drunk drivers kill people all the time.
Yes, that's true.
They do. And drunk drivers hit, pedestrians. It happens. And it is legal to drink. It is not legal to drink over the limit, and it's not legal to drink underage. We do our best to enforce it in Burlingame. Our police do a wonderful job. We had a sobriety check last weekend. I would hope, and if we need to add more enforcement on all of these issues, we can, but alcohol can impact others and can make people make decisions that are, my daughter was at a bar in San Francisco and someone dumped a Mickey into her drink. And the end result for that was not good. She is a girl who does not drink. and I'm sorry to have to say this here in public, but I will share it. And, so alcohol and bars, they're all, even for overaged people who are educated and understand what's going on, there are risks to all of it, and they do impact other people. I think we have to do enforcement and education in combination with anything that we decide here tonight.
That's well said. Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Ortiz.
Just a final thought, because we were talking about the multifamily. The people in these multifamily residences don't have a choice to go into where the smoke is happening, which is why, and again, I was originally not in favor of banning that. Then I heard the testimony and I was in favor. So, but if you as an adult make the choice to walk in where there is smoking going on, whether it be Beans or the hookah lounge, that's your choice. And we're not here to ban cigarettes or to ban tobacco in the city of Burlingame. We're just trying to regulate where it's being used. So when it's a private place where you choose to walk in and you're an adult and your ID is checked, I'm not going to tell you not to do it.
I hear you loud and clear, and that resonates with me too. And by the same token, the state, specifically permits smoking, actually permits it, in a tobacco lounge or whatnot. So it's not as though the state is banning smoking either. So I take that point. Are there any other final comments on this Broadway hookah smoking thing? Otherwise, then I'm not sure we've given you very clear guidance.
Avenue conversation.
Then we'll do Burlingame Avenue.
One thing that would really help is how you'd like to see this come back to you, because I'm unclear if we want to have an ordinance that's ready for a first reading, or if we want to have another study session with some formulated ideas maybe going forward. But a little guidance on that would be really helpful.
Well, to me, one, we could clarify what we meant by no smoking on Broadway. And that's an interpretation of what we did before. Did we mean the backyards? That's a yes or no kind of question, right?
So for that one, the way it's written right now is clear. So there's no real interpretation issue on it. We could certainly amend it to bring it forward to make sure that we go with the council's intent, if it is to allow outdoor patio smoking.
Well, I would suggest we bring back an amended ordinance, and then we either vote that up or we down or down. So we either leave it the way it is, or we change it to, focusing on the public side of the streets, right? That's.
So you're saying a separate ordinance, and that's certainly something we could do.
Amendment.
Yep.
Right.
So if the amendment would be an ordinance, we could certainly do that. We could take this as purely a Broadway, and if you want to talk about it now, a Burlingame Avenue ordinance for that portion of it, and then talk about who.
All right, let me go to Burlingame Avenue. Everyone's, I personally don't feel we have an update on Burlingame Avenue. I appreciated that Broadway came, this is how I feel. I'll just start. I appreciated that the Broadway ban came up from the B bid, from the Broadway bid, from the business people who were there. I read the survey. I saw the survey. I don't think that's the same thing as the local business district getting behind either a ban or not. And so personally, I don't feel Burlingame Avenue is ripe for this conversation. Councilmember Beach.
I hear where you're coming from, Mr. Mayor. I guess I would have a question for the city attorney. So given that we kind of had a pilot program going on in Broadway, and this is whatever we consider is considered an ordinance, something more permanent under the police powers, can we pick and choose which neighborhoods? Or does it have to be a citywide? Can we pick and choose one and or the other?
Certainly makes it more difficult to pick one and not the other, because what we're doing in our police power is looking at the public health and safety of those populated areas. So you'd have to make some sort of findings about why the health on Broadway is different than the impact of a potential ban on Burlingame Avenue.
Okay. But that isn't how it was described to us when it came to us. We weren't told, if you do Broadway, by the way, you're going to wind up doing every commercial district in Burlingame.
Simply by the police powers, it's something that you definitely want to consider, because you have to make sure that it's consistent with protecting the public health and safety. We'd have to say why we're doing it in one place and not another.
It would have been helpful if that had been more clear, if that's really the city attorney's position on this, but be that as it may.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
can I suggest that, and I'm thinking of what Councilmember Beach said and what you said and your concerns are, what I'm thinking is we should approach it the same way we did in Broadway, and we put together a pilot. Then we get comment on the pilot after a period of time, and then we can vote it permanently. So we could do the same thing we did on Broadway.
so are you proposing that we actually ban smoking on Burlingame Avenue?
Yes, as a pilot.
Okay.
I had a
Reactions?
I had a clarifying question on that survey, and maybe this is back to your how did we control who those invites went out to respond? And was there a prevention of people responding more than once?
So first of all, it's not a scientific survey, so you need to take it for what it is, which is a kind of community sentiment measure. The survey does track IP addresses for not tracking in the sense of figuring out who's submitting the
But just
response.
kind of a raw number of
Shows whether there's duplicate IP addresses answering. And there were not very many. I think there was probably 3 or 4 duplicates.
That's good.
So that's the information we have.
Thank you.
Any other reactions to Councilmember Ortiz's proposal to extend the ban to Burlingame Avenue, which would then, of course, require somebody to define what that actually means from a geographic point of view, which is not as easy as Broadway. Yes.
Through the mayor, thank you so much. I just have another question, which is, so we have more than just Burlingame Avenue as a commercial district.
Right.
We have our hotels, which are a commercial district. We have the plaza, which is a commercial district. We're now going to have Rollins Road, which is going to end up being, so we're going to have a lot. So how do we, there's Howard, it's not just Burlingame Avenue, it's Howard and all the side streets. And maybe, all the way down Chapin. So how do we how do we contain this?
So we certainly have to look at what other jurisdictions are doing. And part of this was looking at Palo Alto, looking at Walnut Creek. Walnut Creek has their entire downtown district as a pedestrian retail district, which is somewhat what we based our Broadway ban on, taking districts that were kind of predisposed in the zoning code and saying we're going to apply this ban just to that district. I think to the other point of your question, there are a lot of other commercial districts. We'd have to look to see which one are controlled mostly by private property. I know the plaza does have a lot of private property there, so that's not something we can actually regulate quite as easily. It's not really as much in our purview. But the big question is going to be, what are those most populated business districts? So if we look at Broadway and Burlingame Avenue, and we think those are the 2 most populated ones, that gives us the ability to look at whether or not our police power can reasonably protect the public health and safety of more people.
Okay.
And draw a line. I mean, where you draw it is something that's more of a council prerogative. But I think looking at Broadway and not Burlingame, it is a little harder to.
Okay, so but we could say Burlingame, the downtown Burlingame area, which constitutes primarily public streets, versus say, for example, the hotel district, which is private property, essentially the hotels. And for example, the plaza, which is, you make a good point, private property, pretty much. So we could essentially, I think, eliminate a few of those from the sort of characteristic.
And the way we chose Broadway, and I'll let Kevin talk a little bit about it, but I think we could do a very similar approach to Burlingame Avenue if that was the wish.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes, but if I'm hearing you correctly, the key criteria or lens from a legal standpoint will be the police enforceability around public health. So I don't see how we can't have the option of just permanently making Broadway only and leaving out another part of the city that has the same public health risk. So to me, is it an all or nothing proposition right now? I mean, yes, this is a trial, but is this really kind of the precursor to that? We actually have to come up with a citywide policy that covers our main commercial areas.
From a legal standpoint, my opinion is that you can't do something and I'm getting a little far away from side here, but I think the strong consideration is Broadway the most concentrated pedestrian district? Is that where we think that the most amount of protection will be? Because if that's the case, I think you could stop at Broadway. If we look at Broadway and we look at Burlingame Avenue and we say more people on Burlingame Avenue are making that pass every day, and we'd be able to protect more people by that ban, it becomes very hard to keep it enforced in Broadway, but not Burlingame.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Sorry,
Coulson.
sorry. The other question I have is clarification around the existing tobacco lounge that's there. And I want to clarify that, in fact, don't get in a situation like we just did on Broadway. That lounge is licensed and would comply with these laws because it's indoors. It's only selling tobacco, doesn't sell flavored tobacco, and it's ventilated.
That's true. I did hear someone say that they were applying for a liquor permit. You were not being allowed to serve alcohol at the same time that you have a smoker's lounge. So if that was the case, and again, I don't know details on this, but if that was the case, that wouldn't be.
I have a question on that. I know in sometimes when you're getting in, different permits. So if you're serving alcohol but not charging for it versus say selling it, is there a difference?
I think what we would look to as the city is to make sure that the state has permitted the allowed use. What we don't want to do is ignore the rules, but if we got ABC's making a determination saying we are permitting this because they are not selling the alcohol or the alcohol is allowed to be consumed on the premises, those are certainly in the expertise and the purview of the state.
Okay.
So that's something that we would defer to them on. However, if it was clearly the sale of whiskey in a cigar lounge, that's something that I think, in my opinion, based on what I know so far, would not be permitted under the state.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any other? Well, I'd still like actually to follow up on the question of extending the ban, the pilot program ban to Burlingame Avenue and how colleagues feel about that particular item.
When you say Burlingame Avenue, you mean downtown Burlingame, the Howard.
It sounds like I mean downtown Burlingame.
okay.
Based on the
I mean, one suggestion, sorry to interrupt through the mayor. The boundaries of the bid could be the business improvement district could be a way to approach this. Similar to what we did on Broadway. It more or less corresponds to the boundaries of the business improvement district. And I think if that's the intention of this is the commerce area, it's busy, it's populated, that could be a kind of ready-made boundary.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's consider that for now, the working boundary of a Burlingame, quote, Burlingame Avenue smoking ban. Reactions, Councilmember Beach.
I guess, given the input from the city attorney, that there, and I think there's a great dialogue with some very important questions about the other different business district areas. I think there is a lot of synergy between the downtown bid area and the Broadway bid area from that pedestrian and commercial and foot traffic perspective that's different than some of those other. So I think I do like Councilmember Ortiz's idea that maybe, we see if the bid, I think it probably does make sense to do maybe a pilot there and see how it goes and get that input. It seems hard to say that Broadway could be one way and downtown Burlingame couldn't be, has to be different, would be different. So thank you.
Yes, Vice Mayor Coulson.
I'm in agreement. I can go along with that as a pilot. It's very interesting, but I don't seem to hear as many complaints about Burlingame Avenue or the downtown. And frankly, over the last 6 months, I've been paying attention to how much smoking and cigarette butts and things, and it's like negligible, none, virtually none. In fact, I've never seen anyone smoke in the last 6 months down there. The only thing I've seen down there is marijuana, kids smoking marijuana. So that definitely needs to be tightened up. But
Addressed by the smoking ban.
yeah, it is well, it's addressed right now. It's illegal right now to smoke under age of 21 marijuana. So it's already illegal. It's already addressed. But so I could go along with a pilot, but I'd really want to reach out, or we could even, if it was with all due deference to my colleague, Councilman Ortiz, if he were willing to wait maybe 2 weeks so that we could sort of outreach and get a little support from the bid.
I think this is directional rather.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No rush.
yeah. That we reach out, that in the comprehensive discussion about considering the ban, we would reach out to the bid and the chamber because they represent a lot of the businesses, and we represent, we go out and speak to the businesses and then look into putting this in place as well. I would support that.
Okay. And unless
No, I would.
you're good. So and I'm fine with that too. I will say that one of the reasons that I was holding back is because, as we all acknowledged, we were never really going to enforce using our police powers, meaning our real police. We were never really going to enforce this. And so the reason I thought it was a benefit to have the business district more or less unanimous behind it is because then they can self-police. And I worry a little bit about a system where you don't have buy-in from the people who actually have the stores. That said, it's been, as far as I can tell, the Broadway smoking ban on public streets has been very popular. And so I don't think this is a losing proposition as a politician. I just like to think about how you're actually going to get it done.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, on enforcement, I keep going back to the multifamily ban. I doubt that we've ever gone in and cited anybody, but the power gave the other residents and everybody in the building the power to force these people to do the right thing. So I do believe that this will work, and if we give you empower the people, that they will self-police, and it will make it. I think it has already made a difference on Broadway. So I think.
And it'll certainly register with a lot more people if we do the Burlingame Avenue Business District too. So, so there's guidance on that. Wasn't where I thought we'd go, but that's where we are. So that's the process in front of you. With respect to amending or not, the question of hookah, again, the first question will be whether we agree that backyards should be exempted, because you can't do it unless you believe that. And then secondarily, the question will be, which I don't think there's consensus, at least I don't feel settled in my own mind about whether to ban hookah or not.
Understood. So what I'm hearing now is we can certainly come back.
Flavored tobacco, right?
We're going to wait to make sure that we get buy-in from the DBID and get some extra feedback there to ensure the Burlingame Avenue business owners can weigh in. We can prepare a model ordinance for perhaps a 1-year pilot, extending the Broadway for another year in conjunction with the Burlingame Ave Business District pilot program as well. But bring that in slowly to make sure that we get the feedback. So when you're considering it, you have a lot more data at your disposal.
Good.
In terms, I did want to make one clarification. There is actually the possibility of a indoor hookah lounge, because it's not necessary. It doesn't necessarily have to be out.
Serve food or booze.
They can't serve food or booze. They could have a restaurant next door. They could have just a pure hookah lounge if they wanted to, but it is possible to do that as long as they're complying with everything else we talked about today.
Except for the flavored tobacco.
Except, well, no, if we exempt the flavored tobacco.
If we exempt the flavored tobacco.
But it could be indoors. It doesn't necessarily have to be an outdoor.
Understood. All right. I want to thank every member of the public who came and spoke, whether you did or didn't speak. It's great to have you here. It makes for better policy. So we appreciate it. Obviously, this is a to be continued. This is sort of the cliffhanger at the end of the season, but we will come back for the next season quick and make our minds up. So thank you for your input, and thanks to the very eloquent commentary we got online as well. But I think it's time to release y'all and give ourselves a night too. All right. Thank you very much for that. Thank you to our city attorney team for putting that together, and also Mr. Gardner for your overview. That takes us to council committee and activities reports. Are there any reports that colleagues would like to make about recent activity?
No.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the only thing I would report out to y'all is that we had a great presentation at the Resource Management and Climate Protection Committee from CCAG about multifamily residential and all the benefits we can get from converting to electric. And I'm working with staff to try to figure out a way to rally up and the CEC and Sustainable San Mateo County and PCE are all interested in this. So we're going to try to figure out a way to do something in Burlingame that's a pilot program on how to engage our especially older stock owners of multifamily residential on all the rebates and benefits that they can get from the state. And so I hope you'll support me in this. And if we can do it, I think it'd be a wonderful presentation.
Great. Thank you very much for that initiative.
That's it.
Any other comments or updates? Seeing none, thank you. That takes us to future agenda items. Are there any requests from colleagues? I see none. We have minutes and so forth from the different commissions that are in our packets or available to us electronically. Is there anybody that we should close in memory of tonight? Well, that's good news. So with that, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.